Here we go.
Pam just walked her, drove in, so she should.
Okay, well, we'll get going and she'll catch us up. So,
All right.
this is the special village council meeting to talk about the budget workshop. Today is April 10th, 2023. Here comes Pam Hanson, so welcome. What we're going to do is, Roger's put together some budget amendment stuff that we need to walk through. We didn't do roll call, but,
You don't do that for,
okay, we're good for that. Pam, we're going to go through the budget amendment
okay,
stuff
thank
that's in
you.
your new business section here. So, Roger, if you want to, I guess, give us a little summary of what you're
Sure,
talking
let
about.
me just walk through the whys of this first. We adopt a budget at the beginning of the year that has expectations about how much money we're going to collect and how much money we're going to spend in all these various categories. Fundamentally, they're estimates, because we can't predict with any absolute certainty what we're going to get in terms of absolute revenues or the expenditures. The state requires us to monitor our spending on a periodic basis, and to the extent that we spend more than what we were expecting to in any particular category, or receive less money than we expected, or more money than we expected, they request that we make adjustments in the budget to authorize, in some cases, what we've already done. But just so that they know that we are in fact reviewing that and updating it. This document covers the first 6 months of the current fiscal year, July through December of 2022. Remember, our fiscal year goes from July of '22 to the end of June in '23. Okay? Now, we just got the data for the end of March, which is the next third quarter, and we haven't had an ability at this point yet to prepare a recommended resolution for that, which we will bring to you at the next meeting. Okay? So this resolution that was drawn up tries to capture all of that and explain what it is that we're doing and why it is that we're doing it. If you look at the sheet that follows it,
Page 2 you're talking about?
pardon me?
Page 2? Or there's no page number?
There's no page number on it, but what the yellow line at the top of the page says General Fund 101, that's the account number for the general fund.
Right,
And this shows what the proposed amendments are in terms of additional, this is revenues, the first line is revenues. And there's state revenue sharing and dividends, return on insurance premium. Those are two items that are increases to our revenue during the first 6 months. And so there's an amendment there that increases the amount of the expected budget revenue by $67,950, just under $68,000. Okay?
Okay.
If you go down to the next line, we're talking about expenditures. And in that case, we have two changes related to the council's budget. One is $10,000 in contracted services, and one is $3,500 in miscellaneous expenses. I did not think to throw in my detail for each one of these things, and unfortunately Susan can't be with us tonight. So these are things that you authorized, but we still have to make the changes so that they're reflected in the budget, okay?
so you can't say what the 10,000 in contract services is?
Off the top of my head, I can't. But I will get you a note out that says exactly what it
Okay.
is.
So is the action that we're looking to do this evening on the agenda to approve the amendment, the budget amendment?
Yes.
And that is required to be done this month?
It's required to be done expeditiously, let me put it that way.
Yeah, the reason that I asked that is it's hard to have a conversation without knowing the specifics for the budget amendment. Now, is this about moving forward, we're approving the authorization to increase what our budget is, so it's additional authorizations, or is it kind of an after the fact?
This is reflecting
We'll
things
put-
that have already been authorized.
We're bringing the budget in line with actual spending
Right.
is.
Well, okay, so,
So-
As of six, as of
Your
the 6
latter
month,
comment's right.
as of
We're-
the 6
we're
month.
what?
We're just, your latter comment's right, we're just
Yeah,
updating the
after the
budget
fact,
for
okay.
after the fact.
Months 1 through 6.
As of the 6th month.
Okay.
Right.
yeah,
And to
correct.
the extent you have any questions about any of the details,
Then we'll do it
we'll
again at
provide
the
that
end
to
of
you.
the
I apologize for not having that in hand this evening.
Right,
Yeah, how would we go about getting that? Because again, I don't want to table, if we're just doing something that's gonna amend things that have already occurred, then I don't want to hold it up.
In the course of discussion this evening, you offer a question about what it is, like more detail on it, we'll get that out. It'll be sent to everybody.
Okay,
So we have, for example, the two items on the village council, we will get that out to you tomorrow.
okay, appreciate it. And then the other thing is just a quick observation. When we do these type of things in the future, very helpful, could we do black for indicating revenues, changes in revenues, and red for where we're below, like, it's a bigger hit to our budget? It's just a quick visual to say, okay, we're under budget here, we're over budget here.
the normal way of doing this is if the numbers, if there's less money, you put it in parentheses, if there's more money, but I see here, we've switched conventions from revenues to expenditures, because the positive is in parentheses and the expenditures, but that's the confusing part for me, is
Yeah.
you have to shift your mindset.
Right.
If it-
In each case, we're talking about an increase in the dollar figure that you're going to have under either expenditures or revenues.
Got it.
Right.
And if you were to put a negative in the expenditure side,
Well,
it
you
would be
did.
a reduction in the amount of expenditures.
And which is exactly what you did here with DE and I. It
Yeah.
looks like you put a negative and I guess, yeah, if you're looking at you just have to look where you are, I understand.
Just to clarify though, David, I think I heard your comment as you want in red so we can find it quickly and
Yeah,
easily on
correct.
large items that have a significant impact on the budget?
Well, it
Or a
would-
simple reduction, because normally the convention would be, and red is minus.
And that's right, yeah, I want it to be where we're over budget, which would be like, to me, you're in the red, right? I'm thinking from a business sense, you're in the
Right.
red, you're in the black. Doing that type of an indication on, like, the highlighted first line, 67,950 would be black, then the next one would be red, 13,500. But if you guys have a convention that works for you traditionally, not here to get in the way of it, just, I think it would pop off the page a little bit quicker.
I just think this accounting system works a little differently than that. Because we're adjusting the budget, and like Bill said, that what we're doing is bringing the budget in line with the actual expenditures, as opposed to having a fixed budget that we're either over or under the target. You know, where we're not.
I mean, that is what I'm thinking,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But
Yeah, we're adjusting the budget.
yeah, I get the concept of what we're doing. I'm saying that again, if you have color coding of it, is just easier for me to
Okay.
process,
Got
but
it.
if it works for everybody else,
Dave, I
it's fine.
think that's an issue I'd like to talk about in the future here, because personally, I'm really tied into this. If more money's going out, that's in parentheses. If money's coming in,
Okay.
it's not. And that's not what we're doing here. And I want to understand why because this is different than the way we did it several years ago. But I'm not worried about that. Let's move on
Yeah,
with this.
we can get into the material.
And then we can get into
Yeah,
the conventions
non-material
and
things
stuff
later.
at a later time, so. Okay. So we're working our way through here, and we've got an additional $68,000 in revenue that we didn't think we were gonna have when we initially,
That's correct.
so our current revenues went from 1.66 million to 1.73 million. That's the top two lines. Then the rest of this is higher expenses with the exception of DEI, so.
So it's fair to point out that you'll have both a positive and a negative collection of revenues and expenditures in the other funds as well. So when you go to the next page, you get a summary for the changes in the general fund at the top of the page. And the, it's not a critical issue in terms of anything other than information, but it says at the bottom of the general fund section that the fund balance as a percentage of budgeted expenditures actually went down slightly as a consequence of these changes that were made in the budget. And it's just a general picture thing rather than anything that you actually have to adopt, but it's trying to put some perspective on this.
To me, the significant takeaway from this line is that we spent $400,000 more than we took in last year. So our fund balance went from $1 million to a little over $800,000.
Yeah, Bill, but we knew we were gonna be coming
We-
in
we
to
did.
68.
Absolutely.
The only difference in, as far as the general fund balance goes, is a 43,550.
Right.
To the bad, but we already
Right.
knew we were in the hole.
We did, no question. Yep, yep.
So, Major Streets Fund, there's some adjustments that are made in that based on expenses that were not included in the budget but have been received and recorded during the course of this 6-month period. There's 70,000 more from a transfer from the general fund to the Major Street Fund. And then the Road and Street Construction Fund had some additional expenditures that needed to be recorded, not outside of our total budget, but they were not included in what we adopted in July of last year, June of last year.
Do we know what they're for?
I can get those for you, but they're, all the detailed work that was done at the end of the year, sidewalks primarily, but also landscaping and those kinds of things are included in that 140,000.
Okay.
See, transfer money from the general fund to the road fund is kind of unusual.
What happened there is that, because of the fact that we have one fund from which we write checks, money goes in and out of the general fund in order to make those transfers. So, in this one case, what we did was audit all of the expenditures that got in and out of the general fund as a consequence of that. And there was a $70,000 overpayment to the general fund from this fund that resulted in the adjustment of $70,000.
Okay. I'd like to understand the detail of that at a later time.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of major street funds, our fund balance is $4,000. So we have no money basically in our street fund. Okay.
Wait, Roger, you said that we had 70,000 that was put into our general fund that was supposed to go into our street fund, and we're just transferring that? Is that what you just said?
What I was trying to explain is that as we write checks to support this activity, money goes in and out of the general fund to cover the checks that are written. And in this auditing that was done of the fund, we found that there was 70,000 more than was needed in the general fund for check coverage that needed to be paid back to this other fund.
Okay. I guess I would have expected to see that in the general fund then, the excess in the general fund
I
then.
understand what you're saying, but
Okay.
this was, well, and I'd have to go back, but it would have been an adjustment that was made in the general fund.
Yeah, you'd think we'd have had a $70,000 adjustment in the general fund. It's not there.
Yeah, we have transfer out to major streets, the top of the page.
That's,
That's the out, but the question is,
This is-
he's saying that
Where
we
does
had
it-
an in, where's the in?
where's it coming from here?
Yep.
You have two accounts, one out, one in, two entries. One out of general fund, one into major streets. The one out, I don't see it.
We'll get that.
Okay,
Wait, transfers out?
The
At the top
out's
of the
there,
page,
it's
right
not the
there?
in though, the in to the general fund. He's saying we took money from the general fund, where we're not seeing it in the general fund being
Came
here.
to the major.
Came
streets
into the
fund.
major street
Okay,
fund,
I'm
transfer
sorry.
in
Yep,
from
you
general
got it.
fund, $70,000.
it's here, okay,
there.
I'm wrong,
Okay,
it's here.
I'm just, from the words that you said, it sounded like we had extra money in the general fund that we should be seeing a plus
No,
70
they,
there.
they owe $70,000. They take it from one account, they put it into this one, because this is the one they write the checks from. And then they put it,
So it's just a very brief in and out, you're just moving it quickly just so you can write the check? It's not more
Correct.
than that? That's all I wanna know.
Yes.
Okay.
In the police fund, most of this is fairly straightforward. It's got a little more detail with each of the account changes than what we've seen up above, I guess, so it's a little more clear. But we did receive a task force reimbursement for participation from the Fed. That's $4,200. That's additional revenues. And the PD training, let me see. We have a total of 72,000 in additional revenues for the police fund. That has been more than what we anticipated. On the bottom side, there is a difference of about 67,000 that actually puts us, well, wait a minute.
no, there's an additional 5,500 in expenses.
Yes,
So the police fund came out 67,000 to the good.
Right.
Right.
So we anticipated being 77,000 in the hole, or have to go to the general fund for, and now it appears at the halfway point, we only have to go into the general fund 10,000 to cover police.
yep. Any other good questions about that, ma'am?
Just a question slash comment. So listening to the questions that people have and the questions I'm thinking about, there's a story that's being told here. I think we do need some more detail so we can understand how it is fund accounting, but it's also, there's reasons for it. Something that I'm wondering about is, to what extent are these expected or unexpected, knowing that this is a very organic process anyway, in village government? But
Yeah.
what are, when do I need to perk up and say, we're getting into a danger zone, or we need to talk more about this because things are heading in the wrong direction? I think that's really what we're all concerned about.
Agreed.
If you take a look at these numbers in terms of how they measure up with our total expenditures, they're relatively minor. There's not anything in here that should cause you to be pulling your hair out in terms of the extent of the difficulties. These are within what I regard as normal range for the type of stuff that you would or would not see. To the extent that I don't have for you this evening the detail on certain of those things, I apologize, because that makes it a little cloudier than it needs to be. But we will get that stuff out for you.
So Bill Lamont made a comment about $4,000 in the road fund, which is quite a bit less than we're used to having in that fund. What are your comments about that low number now midway in our fiscal year?
The road fund is basically the money that we get transferred or sent to us from the state as a part of the Michigan Department of Transportation sharing of
Act
revenue
51, yep.
for both major streets and minor streets.
Right.
And this is money that went into in this case, the amount of money that we had in the road and Street Fund, which is what was the balance left over after, this is from the road, the Major Streets Fund is, there's two things here that I've got confused in terms of the fact that we have road and street construction down here, which is part of what we spent on sidewalks primarily,
Yeah,
but also the finishing of Franklin Road. And that has also been, for this report, combined with what we get from the state in terms of the Major Streets Fund. So you've got two different articles in here as a part of that overall expenditure.
so we're having a finance committee meeting tomorrow, I think. One of the questions I'm going to bring to that meeting is, this is quite a low balance compared to what we've carried in the past, and I'm anxious about that. Wondering what expenses are coming up, and do we have a target balance that we want to keep in that fund?
So what I believe I owe you is a comparison of this versus the major and minor street funds from the state.
Yeah, okay, that'd be good. Thank you.
Hey, Roger. I'm putting your microphone.
Stick it in my ear, is that what you said?
No, because you're kind of facing away from it, so it's hard to hear.
All right. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Wastewater fund, this is primarily storm sewer.
Small stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
very minor details. And similarly, in the building department, this is the area where we carry a rather substantial fund balance, but these are items that we had estimated in setting up the expenditures, planned expenditures in this, and these are adjustments to what's actually happened in the first 6 months.
And at some point in time, building activity will diminish and the expenses will continue, so we need a balance.
Right. And we're also not allowed to use these monies for other operating purposes in the building.
Right.
Can we, next year's budget, can we, well, how much of the 754 is expected to be needed?
To be needed?
Yeah, will
It's
we all
irrelevant. It has to stay
754?
there.
I'm sorry?
Can't go anywhere else.
No, I'm not asking that, but we can lessen the contributions in some manner, future contributions.
Without looking at each building permit, that's a difficult one to assess. Mark. It's,
But it keeps growing by, in this case, $60-some thousand per year. It's been growing every time we've looked at it. I mean,
But how do you stop it?
well, you lower the building fees. That's the way you
You know,
take in more, less revenue.
if you were concerned about that, we could in fact request an audit of how this is coming, how those numbers grow versus what we're getting in terms of actual building permits in the village and how they change from year to year. If you're uncomfortable with that, an adjustment in the rate structure may be something that's appropriate.
well, I mean, we should understand year over year after year it's growing, and if you do nothing to change, it's something we'll see, next year we'll see 800,000, then 850, 900,000.
Right.
At what point do we stop?
What is it for? What do we use it
Building, to
for?
pay the building inspectors, pay the electrical guys, all the different inspection stuff
Okay,
related to building.
okay.
Yep.
So as people are doing whole new homes or making amendment, or remodeling their homes, if somebody has changed the electrical wiring, that requires permitting. But there's also a certain amount of time that we have to pay the building official for reviewing the permits. Some of the work that we do is farmed out. HRC does a lot of review on storm drainage, and that sort of thing in terms of site plans. There's a number of different ways that we govern what's going on with remodeling. If it's an historic building, there's an additional set of things that we have to examine on behalf of the Historic District Commission. So it comes in a lot of different ways, but it all has a certain fee structure associated with it.
Understood.
And that really is probably the only way that you would get at reducing this amount of fund balance, is
Well,
by,
what I would propose is that for new businesses, business remodel, if our fund balance is going up by 60, 70, 80 grand a year, let's zero it out for any new business that wants to come in. You know, if I'm going to subsidize anybody, I would subsidize those fees.
I think we need a more in-depth analysis. I get what you're saying. Just a little historical perspective on this. At one time, we tried to accrue the expenses as, here's a building permit that there were $2,000 worth of fees, here's where we're gonna spend them. And it was so much work keeping that accrual up to date that we dropped it. And that would be the exact answer you're looking for, Mark.
I'm not necessarily looking at, well, we should understand how it's been growing.
Right.
If we got a trend where it's going forever upwards, let's change the rate. One possibility, understanding what our liabilities are, let's change rate structure for something that we prefer. I would prefer, personally, zero out anybody who wants to come in. We'll give you zero fees to remodel your building, something like that. I could see reasonable.
But what's the minimum amount that we're gonna have in that account? That's the key, because
Yes,
again,
that's why we asked.
historically, it's probably been 10 years ago, we took 400,000 out of the general fund and put it in the building fund because we did just that. So you get,
All I'm
you got it.
asking is that we look at it.
And I'm with you. Let's look at it. Yeah,
I'm happy leaving it at that for right now.
yeah,
Because I remember that situation, we also changed the compensation structure for the
Right.
building official
Right.
because of that.
right.
But understanding how this fund works, what the restrictions are,
Yep.
what are some other ways to legally use the money?
Right.
And what's our
That's a good
target
question.
balance for this?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Right, I
So-
agree with you.
But the question is, what else can we do with the money?
Yes,
That's a question for council, is
Exactly.
is there an out in the whatever state statute establishes building funds? Is there, is there a washout clause at some point? What is it that a municipality has to do? Or does it just continue to grow and then you would do like we're saying and make subsequent adjustments to bring it down? Is there no,
Peter and I'll follow up on that and give you a
for a certain
report.
period of time or
Yeah.
years or whatever?
Yep,
So just with the historic houses, for example, that are kind of, there's some that are in a little disrepair, if one, we wanted, any chance that could be used to purchase a building? Like, no, just asking, can always ask.
Good try.
Okay, and also do the business, the businesses, the $100 fee, does that go into this?
and the building licenses,
Yes,
I'd have to look. I don't think so.
I don't think so.
you don't think
Maybe
so?
it's general
Different fund.
funds.
Okay.
Now, as far as Mark's comments go, those, as far as looking for incentivization, that is certainly the place to go versus incentivizing residential builders. So, I mean, we have David now. So, yeah, if that is something to look into, which is, if we did X and that's, cost us, Y a year, what could that translate into?
exactly.
Right,
And could we specify, no, I don't know, can we specify for any restaurant or food or things that we want? Like, we know we want a coffee shop, we want a marketplace, we want something like that, can we specify that for, if we get those things coming in, we could waive the fees for that?
I'd be willing to incentivize any business wants to come downtown.
Any business?
I would.
Okay.
Let's be business friendly.
I'm just saying even
Certainly,
extra,
we want,
can you
we
have
want
even
to motive,
extra?
we certainly would desire certain ones, but again, it's just the whole idea. If there's somewhere to go to give someone a break, I completely agree with you that that's the place.
you could, yeah, I guess potentially you could waive building fees for new businesses downtown.
That's
Absolutely.
exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he's saying.
Right, right, okay. So I guess,
Good idea.
Roger and
It's
Peter,
a good
you're
idea, it's a
gonna,
good idea.
Very good idea.
It's a
you're
good
gonna
idea.
give us some background and the legalities of how can we use building fund revenue?
Yes,
Okay,
we'll do that.
okay. What else do we need to talk about with respect to the,
The rest of it is, we've gone through all the details. The stuff at the bottom is just summaries of what you've just gone through. And the amendment would authorize, the resolution that was prepared would authorize the changes that were outlined in this document.
so basically, we're gonna spend $40,000 more at this snapshot than we did when we put the,
In all funds combined, yes.
yes, when we
Yeah.
put the budget together.
Right.
Right,
And you've already spent it, but yes.
right, right.
Okay?
Okay, any other comments,
You're scowling at me.
questions?
No, so are we gonna deal with this, I know that we're not doing it now, but are we gonna try and
It's on the
take
agenda.
action
Yes,
later? Okay,
yes.
Or are we gonna wait for?
Yep, it's on the agenda,
But we're in the
I guess we'll
budget
talk
workshop,
after.
right?
right,
Now.
Well, we're almost done
not
with the
there.
budget workshop, because we're
But I
supposed
don't-
to be moving into the Eagle
11C,
workshop.
yeah.
All right, I can hold my question.
So we have
Finance.
a Zoom meeting that's been scheduled for 6:30 this evening with Kim Etheridge from Eagle. You folks had requested an opportunity to chat with her about what's happening in the downtown, what the status of our water investigations are, and she is joining us. At least that was the plan. Do you have her?
Yeah, she's there.
Somebody's in the waiting room.
She's in the waiting room
She's waiting.
at the top.
Oh, yeah, Kim E. entered the waiting room.
We don't get to see Kim. Oh, there she
There we
is.
go. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Can she see us?
I don't know whether she can see us or not.
No. And are we just relying on the laptop audio? Okay, we may want to just table this, because I'm not sure we're going to be able to hear.
Just scream, I'll be able to hear. That's something we, I don't have.
Well, let's see.
Yeah, we'll
Otherwise,
see.
We don't need to waste our time, and we'll just
Right.
go.
So Kim, speak up and let's see if we can hear you. Hi. And we're not getting you. Are you muted?
No, it's the computer audio. It's not picking it up.
Shoot. It's a good idea, bad technology.
We don't have any bigger speakers. No, we don't have anything for the speakers. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you guys
All
hear?
right. I'll talk loud. I can be loud.
Can you crack up the speaker?
Yeah.
I'm gonna rearrange my screens
We got you.
because I have it on both screens, and I'm just gonna play around with it while I'm kind of looking at you, because I wanna also share a screen if I can.
I would, hang on, she's going to share hers.
There we go.
She's gonna share her screen. Just give her.
Oh,
give her
You just gotta give her authority, I think.
So go to the red where it says stop
Stop
share.
share.
Yep. If you click it, it's just going to see
I can't hear
data.
you guys anymore. Oh, yeah, I can.
She wanted to show her screen. She wanted to share her screen with us.
Right. The host has to give her permission.
Did you enable sharing? Go to your security button at the bottom, because you're gonna have to allow her to share. Right? Yeah, okay, you're good.
Kim, we think we're ready. Did she hear us?
Yeah. Jim, you still there?
I think that screen froze.
No, her screen's not frozen. Hey, Kim, can you hear us?
Kim?
I can barely hear you. Let's see. Speaker. Okay, that's a lot better.
Okay. Are you ready?
So, what do we need to do here?
I mean, we need
Are
to
we gonna
schedule.
do this, or is this,
Next.
is this?
Yeah, why don't we just table
Kim,
it?
are you ready?
I am. I can hear you. I couldn't hear anybody else very well, so maybe you might have to share your microphone.
Okay, if you just want to go ahead and start, and then we'll, as questions come up, we'll translate, we'll bring them to you. If you want to start with your presentation, just go ahead.
Can I get permission to share? Oh, never mind, I have it. Okay, so. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
There goes.
Okay.
Okay,
So, hello, everyone. I'm Kim Etheridge. I'm the project manager. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm the project manager for Eagles Remediation and Redevelopment Division at the Franklin Village Plaza and surrounding properties. The plaza itself is a site of a facility, we call it, where in the back, you can still see the screen of my little hand on there?
Yes.
Okay. So in the back of Franklin Village Plaza, we have determined that there is around the old septic field remaining dry cleaning solvents that are in groundwater and vapor and soil. This probably isn't new, well, maybe new if there's new council members here. I'm kind of feeling like I'm just talking to Kathy, but apparently there's obviously a lot of other people here. So this is the plaza itself, and we have an active subslab depressurization system in the plaza to keep the vapors from entering the basement and all the cracks and all of the things. We also have that same kind of design, a subslab depressurization around the law offices behind the Franklin Holistic Medical Center. So that's what we have as far as what would be kind of like a radon system, where you would have a fan that's kind of a blower that's kind of, it can either pull radon out from under your basement and put it up, or it can depressurize under your basement. So what we have here is depressurizing so that it's kind of pushing air out so that the vapors don't intrude into this structure and this structure. We've been out here doing sampling since 2015, and most recently sampling of vapors since 2017. So what you will see here, VP is a vapor point or a vapor sample, which is the dry cleaning vapor or the gas that's still held up in the soil column. So that is actually, we found that it was intruding into the plaza. We found that it was also intruding into the basement of this condo here. So in January of 2021, we put a small vapor intrusion interim mitigation trailer right here. And that has been running, and it has successfully extracted vapors from underneath this condo and under this area. And that continues to run. That's fully ran, and the electric was paid for by the state. Now, there was a hot minute, it took us 6 to 8 months to get our power pole drop and our electric line drop from DTE. And that's right here. So while we were doing that, this neighbor, this resident graciously let us power this trailer with her power supply. And since it was an off-site, this is an off-site property, we did reimburse her for the use of the electricity. Now, that is different than at the plaza, we do not reimburse them for the electrical added use for the mitigation system, because that is actually considered the owner of the plaza's due care. If you buy a contaminated property that you're not liable for, you still have what's called due care to use the property in a way that you don't cause unacceptable risks to people that are inside of it. So them allowing us access to to set up the system that they would have otherwise had to pay for. We paid for that with state funds, and them allowing us access was their due care. But when it's on a property, it's their due care to pay for the electric. And that is something that isn't a very popular notion, but that is something that our department, that's one of our policies. So this depressurization system has been running since 2019, and it's effective. This one is effective. This one is a very small motor, just like what a radon fan would be on a house. And this one has effectively made so that there aren't vapors inside of here. Although I will say that we have not sampled, or the health department has not sampled indoor air in any of the structures in some time. That indoor air sampling was delegated to the Michigan Health Department. And then an owner can certainly, sample themselves as well. And we have asked that the plaza owner periodically sample their indoor air. So this red line is what we are planning to do in addition for, again, soil vapor extraction as a pilot test to get out what we consider the source of vapors is right in this septic field. And up against the home, and still up against the law office, and even up against the Franklin Holistic Center, there are vapors of concern. So we are pulling them. This is like a vacuum system. So it's kind of like an old central vacuum. And this pilot test that we're doing is we're pulling vapors all the way from here, all the way back to this other trailer that we are in the process of retrofitting. These are both state trailers that were used at other projects successfully, and I was able to borrow them instead of buying new ones, which saved us a lot of money. So this one is currently being retrofitted and fixed up. And then we will be, in the next couple months, hopefully within the next month, we're going to be trenching like a 1 foot wide trench here. And then these squares are going to be vapor extraction wells that are going to go down about 8 feet into the ground. And they are going to, basically like a central vacuum, they're going to pull vapors back to this, and then they're going to be treated with carbon so that we're not pulling vapors out of the ground and then letting them into the air. So that's being paid for with state funding that I was authorized this year. So that is the vapor side of this. The other side, and this is more of a conceptual site model is what we call this. So this is showing, and these are all drawn by our consultant, AECOM. So they go out and do the sampling, and then they make these drawings, these conceptual site models for us that model where the contamination is in around the structures. So, and if you want to take a look at these, I hope that you were able to, or you can play around with that file sharing link that I sent you. There's several things in there. It might take a little while to open them, but they should open as a website. It's best to use Internet Explorer to open these. We're finding this is kind of a newer technology for me to learn to use. So I'm still kind of getting used to it. So there's several maps there, and I just wanted to point to this one since it is the Franklin Holistic Medical Center. This is the Franklin Village Plaza. So what we have here is an extent of petroleum constituents exceeding vapor intrusion screening levels that there's screening levels for a house. So this is if you, and what we are looking at inside this is a non-residential receptor because they're not living there. So they're not breathing this air 24/7. So there is a slightly higher number for non-residential than residential. It's not too much of a difference. So these are showing the vapor points that are actually in the basement of the Slade House. And the green is that they are below the residential levels. And then this one, it's a little misleading because this is actually out on the side of the home. This isn't or of the medical building. It is not inside. And this one does exceed our residential vapor intrusion screening levels. It does not exceed the non-residential, I believe. I'm gonna have to fact check that and make sure. So this shows a lot of red. So this is kind of our danger zone and where we are hoping to be able to successfully pull. It's right here. This vapor point 24 is the one that we've been watching. And so our hope with this pilot test is what we're going to determine with the pilot test is it giving us an appropriate range of influence? Again, I'll go back to this. Is putting this vapor extraction well here going to give us a big enough range of influence to pull vapors back, both from the plaza and from the medical center and the law office? Or are we going to eventually have to think about taking like an arm of this and pushing it out this way? Or possibly even taking something and putting it through the parking lot and going out this way? So that's why we're starting first with this pilot test with these in a linear fashion, is so that we don't have to cause a lot of interruption and damage to the parking lot. This to put this all in is going to take us about a day or two, and then we are going to gravel this and then put asphalt on it, or we may do concrete and then paint it so it looks like the asphalt parking lot. And then eventually, when we're all done with both the pilot test and then the long-term soil vapor extraction, which the long-term may be running for like a year, this is going to be running for 2 to 3 weeks to figure out if it's the proper fix. And if it's not, we might be putting some branches onto this. There are a lot of tree roots here, so that's another reason we want to stay here. So this would all be running. We are baffling this so that it's almost noise proof. This one is baffled and they can barely hear it. They can't hear it at all at night over here. But the owner, in giving us the access, wanted, this is the dumpster. Actually, this is the dumpster enclosure, but now they put their dumpster back here. But these are where those yellow pylons are on the Franklin Village Plaza. The owner has requested that we trench and put this all the way in the back so that people can't see it and that they can't hear it. So we will be doing that. Now we're going to be putting some hedges here so that it's hidden. So that is, we've spent 5 years on getting the vapor, or a handle on the vapor plume here. The groundwater plume is not impacting drinking water wells at levels that exceed any drinking water criteria. We did have a detection of some PFAS in one of the drinking water wells, and it was not exceeding drinking water criteria. And besides that, the volatiles and metals and semi-volatile contaminants, none of those have been detected at all in the 40-plus residential wells that we sample in the area.
Question, Kim. Can she hear us?
So does anyone have any questions so far?
I do.
We have a question.
Is that the first time PFAS was detected in Franklin?
She can only hear the microphone.
I didn't hear anything besides it was that the first
Can
time.
you repeat it?
Here, let me repeat it. Was this the first time that PFAS had been detected in Franklin drinking water?
Yes, it was.
Another question that I have, and I'm new to council, so I don't have as much of the history as other people have. Has this been designated as a EPA remediation zone? or no?
No, a Superfund site? No, it has not. We talked about that. EPA Superfund sites are, it takes a couple years to get one designated, and it can be it's not done lightly, because it can be the public perception of having a Superfund site in your village, is a very, serious thing to do.
Yep.
Now, if we didn't have the funding to be able to do the work, we have talked about it and it has been offered, but since we do have state funding, to keep this going, I don't particularly feel compelled to start having discussions about making this a Superfund site.
That's super helpful, thank you.
But, I'm not the only opinion that matters here, so.
Fair.
So I have a question for Kim. Somebody can repeat
Okay,
it.
we got another question.
Okay.
If there is contamination of the groundwater, what is the solution?
If there is contamination of the groundwater, what type of solution?
Actually, I meant drinking water is what I meant.
Drinking water.
So it can vary, first of all, if there was something where say there was one drinking water well that was impacted. With PFAS, it all depends on what the owners wants to do and what the chemical of concern is. When it's PFAS, luckily, a point of use filter is successful in getting rid of the PFAS. So what we have done on other sites is, if there's one or a couple people that have PFAS in their drinking water and say that they were where you could not get a drinking water supply piped in, then the PFAS is usually, the county health department puts on a filter. It's usually a point of use filter or like a Culligan secondary water source on your kitchen sink. We have not, because of the funding, gone so far as to put entire reverse osmosis systems into homes for people. We have instead gone so far as to just do the Culligan-like point of use faucet filters, which are effective. And lead, lead filters are effective as well. So if you have lead or PFAS in your drinking water, luckily it is something that can be filtrated out. If it is in the plume, like if it is in the groundwater plume, the next phase of this is to look at groundwater remediation. And
I have
I
another
actually
question.
have a separate consultant that is doing an audit of this because
Yeah, groundwater.
we were asked statewide,
She's back.
are there sites that are kind of a big bite, and could we get some help on determining what some other feasible groundwater treatment is? And this is one of them that I did ask for help, and we are having it looked at. Some of the options for groundwater treatment are to pump it and treat it in a shed, like similar to what one of these trailers would do. You can actually retrofit inside of a trailer similar to this, some different water treatment technologies.
Kim?
When you pump and treat and discharge,
Yeah.
what we would be doing is getting.
Kim, real quick, we have a question.
Can we have another question?
Yeah,
Two questions. One is, first on PFAS, is it likely, or there's a risk, that it spreads to other wells? That's the first question.
Is there a risk on the PFAS to have that spread to other wells?
yes, there is, to be honest, but yeah, I can't say that there's no risk because, let me just show you here. It is a very small, it's not a small area, but there are only a couple of groundwater wells that are at a depth that we're concerned about. And one of them is the Franklin Holistic. The other one is the Franklin Village Plaza. I don't want to scroll through this and try to find what I'm looking for. but it is, well, I will, I'm just gonna scroll here, because I want to show you a map
We don't have much
for
to.
PFAS. That's VOCs. Okay. Right? Oh, come on. All right.
We only have about 3 minutes left. I have 2 more questions for Mark.
We got 2 more questions and we're
Okay,
coming up,
keep going.
we're coming up against
Oh,
time.
okay.
So, second question is.
Yeah, if you look through this, on PDF page 26 of that report is going to show you where the PFAS is. It is in groundwater along here and along here. And so I am not hugely concerned about the condos well because it's deeper. And a lot of these are deeper wells, but we are watching the well here and the well here.
Okay, so you kind of answered my second question, is that deeper wells can protect against it then?
So second question is, deeper wells can protect against the PFAS? Yes or no?
Yes, I do not believe that it is going to migrate to those deeper wells because we have not seen the dry cleaning solvents nor any of the metals going to those deeper wells.
Okay, and then that may answer my third question.
But I can't say that it's not going to happen, so that's why I'm continuing to ask for funding to try to do something to pull back this groundwater contamination flow.
Third
But it's
question,
very expensive, like our feasibility study was like $3 million.
Okay.
third question, is
You got
We
there a
already
risk?
spent $3 million at the site.
All right, can
so-
we get another question? Hang
Third
on.
question, is there a risk to groundwater?
There is.
Is there,
Is there a risk to groundwater?
is there risk to groundwater?
Yes, there is. There is, and the groundwater actually has contaminants and it is carrying contaminants. They are not at the Rouge River. They're close to the Rouge River. We do not see any going in there. But again, why we do have groundwater contamination.
Okay.
That's what this blue shows here is dry cleaning solvents exceeding the area of, I'm sorry, no, that's the wrong one. Right here. So this is your groundwater. And we do have indication that it is, these purple slashes are indications that it's contaminated. And we've known that since 2015, when our first samples came back with water. We were looking at the storage tank contamination from the old gas station, and we did first see the dry cleaning solvents right away. But what the more primary risk that the health department actually ordered us to clean up was the vapors and the vapor risks that were being posed to the inside, into the structures. But we're not out of the woods yet on the groundwater contamination.
Any other questions?
We're done, we have to be done.
Kim, thank you very much. We appreciate your time
Okay.
today and,
Yeah, no problem. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there in person, and I can't make any promises about the schedule next month, but hopefully we'll be up and running, and I'd be happy to do this. If you wanted an update before every meeting, I would have no problem doing it if you'd prefer. So just let me know.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Kim.
Yep,
okay.
no problem. Have a great meeting.
You have a great evening.
Okay, bye.
Get it issued. Okay, I guess that concludes our session with the Eagle. We can just move on into our regular village council meeting of April 10th, 2023. Call the meeting to order. Dana, will you take the roll, please?
Trustee Ehrlich?
Here.
Trustee Goldberg?
Here.
Trustee Hansley?
Here,
Trustee Hanky?
Here?
President Lamont?
Here.
Trustee, excuse me, Solly?
Here.
Thank you. We have an agenda before you. There's a motion to approve the agenda.
I move. Go ahead.
I'll second.
Okay, between Mark and Pam. Any comments about the agenda? All in favor of adopting the, oh,
I have one question. So I was just going through the last, our minutes for the last meeting. There were two subcommittees we discussed. We discussed a bicentennial subcommittee. We also discussed some type of utility committee. And again, these are kind of one of the reasons why I like having the minutes before our legal meeting. But I know we have a big agenda. I just kind of want to get that out there, that if we don't get it on now, that we haven't forgotten those items, and that we get that on the agenda for next month.
bicentennial, what was the second one?
A utility commission,
For a public utility
public
commission.
There
utility.
was a discussion about them.
Right, we were gonna, that one, we were gonna discuss what the scope and confines of that would be. The bicentennial was at the suggestion of Ann and Jeff. And I don't think there's urgency on that one to do it this month. I just didn't want to let that slip through the cracks.
Okay.
And let's try and get that on for next month.
So these are for the legal committee meeting for next month. Let's make sure we pick these up. So that doesn't.
So no, I'm not asking to include those in the agenda, because
Okay.
we're pretty busy right now.
Any other comments on the agenda? All in favor of adopting it? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on. We have minutes from the March 13th, 2023 meeting. Yeah, are there any comments?
Would you want to do a motion?
Sure,
So we
let's
can
do the
discuss.
motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
I'll
Second?
Second.
I have a comment, it's actually tagging off of what you said, David. I was concerned that in reading the minutes on the section at the end of the meeting on the discussion of the commission, the Utilities Commission, there was no action item, and I would like to ask Dana to write down what the actions were. Unfortunately, they weren't very clear. I looked at the video. One action was that, I think, David, you had made a comment, you were going to send out some sort of form so people can sign up, but that didn't make it into the minutes.
Yep.
And the other one, the other action was, I had it in an email I sent and I forgot to print it off for myself, that we were going to, shoot. Well, that's the one I remember, the Utility Commission, you wanted to push that out a bit. So I think my recommendation is, can we put an action item with every agenda item, so that even though we discussed it, if there's some actions, that's going to deal with some of that accountability I think you were looking for
Yeah,
last
so
month as well.
I think, to your point, if we don't have a vote, at least have an action item as a
Yeah.
takeaway. That makes sense to me.
Didn't you recommend something about a form that we could pick things that we really were passionate about, that we wanted to?
Yeah, so I'll-
That was another one?
Yep, yeah, that's what Pam's referencing right now.
That was that, and then the other one, I thought, I remembered what it was. Bill, you had said you wanted to champion the priority lists.
My comment, I think, was I didn't understand what projects this committee would handle, and I wanted us to figure that out before we move forward. What are the specifics of, what's the charge of this group? What are they gonna do?
Okay, so that sounds like that's the item
And that
that we're
goes-
bringing to the legal.
Right,
Yep,
right.
perfect.
Okay, we're still considering the minutes. Anybody else have any comments, Mark?
I do. Section G, we were talking, first, Dana, thank you, you do a great job on these minutes. Section G, we talked about the open burn ordinance and talked about changes, and in reading the packet, I think we might have missed one or two. So I guess what I'm asking is, when we talk about changing these ordinances in the fly, or making these revisions of the fly, let's try and capture what those suggested changes were, because I think we might have missed something. So, thank you.
So are you proposing a change, or?
Not proposing a change, I'm just in the future, as we kind of made some agreements amongst ourselves to 3 or 4 points.
Okay,
and I think we might have missed one.
Okay. Any other comments? So-
I personally like the direction that the minutes in general are going though.
I agree.
They're sticking to what transpired, what we discussed. If items are missed, that's what the purpose of this is.
Yeah.
But this now gives someone a simple place to go back and see what was discussed. If you need details, that's what the videos are for, transcripts are for. So these are so much easier to read right now. So again, miscontent happens and that's great, you know, getting that fixed. But the general overall tenor, I think, is really going in a good direction.
Great. Any other comments? All in favor of approving the minutes as written? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes approved. Next item on the agenda, public requests and comments. We ask that you step up to the microphone and identify yourself, and we'll give you 3 minutes to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
How are you? My name's Joe Wenger. I live at 25866 Balsam. I have gone through quite a nightmare trying to work through an issue with the village. Roger and I have met. Peter has received some correspondence from me. And I don't know how this interaction works, but I've sent Peter 2 times, 2 emails. And Peter, have you responded?
I forwarded it to the appropriate authority.
Could you at least respond to say I have forwarded it to the appropriate authority?
Council has a policy that they only engage attorney on their approval or whether it be administrative requests. I cannot respond to individual citizens and their requests.
Okay, so it's very unusual. As quick as I can make this, I'd like to be able to send a packet to each and every one of you. I don't know if this is how appropriate it is. I don't know how this works. All I know is a home has been built next to me. My house is inundated with water since the construction of the individual's pool. I have video, I have pictures. Roger's been to my house. Bill Dinnan, the village building official, has acted in a manner that to me borders on malfeasance. And I have endless pictures and endless documentation. I have done everything I can. I hired a civil engineer on my own behalf. I have a report from that individual. I've been trying to contact HRC, the village's consultant, but they won't speak with me. Roger won't speak with me for reasons I don't know. He handed it off to Peter, who has yet to respond to me. Is this how the village works? Because honestly, this is the first time I've been in this situation. I'm a small businessman. When somebody has issues of any sort, good or bad, I contact them immediately, as quick as possible, address it. I can say, I can't, take care of it today, but I got your correspondence. These kinds of things, to me, are just normal. What I've suffered through for a year and a half, as Roger knows, is something that I've never experienced in my 61 years. And I don't have to tell you guys, I'm not interested in telling you how much I pay in taxes, and I'm not trying to be that person. I'm telling you that his video on here of water this high on my neighbor's property against the silt fence, gushing across my lawn into the well of my basement. The window of the well of the basement broke. I have pictures of all of those things. I cannot get any resolution. Bill Dinnan hasn't done one thing. Matter of fact, everything he sent me, he told me that there's a Michigan, what the heck's it called? Not drainage, some thing that says that water courses normally. I responded, that is true. But when you build a brand new house and you raise the elevation, which if you could please come to my house, he has boulders this high.
Jeff, we're out of time, but
I
if
know.
you, if you do have some specifics that you'd like us to see.
Yes.
Get that to Roger. Roger's our point of contact.
So Roger
He'll
will disseminate it
distribute them
to
us.
You could.
Right, and he'll distribute them to us, and,
Jeff?
and we'll, yeah.
Right, so thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming here. Thank you. I'm sorry that you're having this trouble. First I've heard about it. Can you give us your address
Yeah, give us
again?
your
Yes,
address.
25866 Balsam. Peter has a video on his email.
Okay.
I'd be happy to send packages to you.
Please do.
Paul.
Yep.
Give them to
I'm not here
Roger.
to take up
Roger will
your
get
time.
them to us.
From
I
him.
just
Yeah.
ask you,
Or you
this
can
is the thing.
email.
This is our.
Can I just add one thing? I've heard this like word that's endlessly said, transparency in government. Just understand, I have suffered the absolute opposite of that.
Okay,
And it
that's-
really is disappointing to
That's
me.
disappointing to hear, but
Yes, I'm
please-
hoping we can resolve it.
Okay.
And
hopefully we
thank you
can.
all. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to hearing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
My God.
Any other public comments?
Good afternoon. On Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, I started an online petition. The name of the petition was Improve Service and Stop Outages in Franklin by Establishing Utilities and Technology Committee. The copy of the petition was, power outages, call drops, and loss of internet service is a regular occurrence in Franklin, harming residents and creating life-threatening hazards that can be avoided. The frequency at which residents are losing cell service, internet, power, and by effect, heat and water is preventable if the village prioritizes these issues. The administration needs to partner with utility companies, municipalities, and commissions, leverage its resources to improve village services and reliability. One immediate no-cost solution is to establish a Village Utility and Technology Commission to recommend actions and oversee investments that improve service and enhance reliability in the village. The administration needs to act upon these recommendations to benefit residents. The village's trend of inaction and false starts in the areas of utilities and technology create a growing and preventable danger to Franklin residents. We are demanding immediate and concrete action to prevent further endangerment to Franklin residents. Continued improvements to technology, infrastructure, and utilities across the state are available and accessible to Franklin. We recognize the occasional power outage and dropped call is inevitable. However, some risks are outside of village control. However, there are many improvements and changes the village government can make to reduce the number of outages and improve service within its boundaries. We implore the village government to engage, communicate, and serve its residents by working tirelessly to address the technology and utility gaps within our village. The village administration has a duty to keep us safe, healthy, and connected to basic essentials like power and water. We now call upon you to fulfill that duty. The goals and scope of the committee and requested action: to provide policy direction, oversight, and to deliberate, drive, and make recommendations on matters related to village technology, planning, implementation, and organization relating to the village's digital presence, technology priorities and initiatives, utilities, infrastructure, strategy, and decisions. Identify and pursue technology and energy grants. Coordinate and communicate with utilities, service providers, public entities, and other stakeholders on efforts and remediation approaches, and share and leverage resources, best practices, data, and trainings to improve Franklin residents' experience. I sent a text message from my phone 11 days ago, and we have 137 Franklin residents signing on to this petition. Examples of the lack of focused effort in the committee to drive initiatives related to technologies is what was the value and the ROI on the water survey that was launched in 2021? What is the strategy to improve cell service for Franklin residents? We're missing out on opportunities for residents to remotely participate in council, planning, and zoning board meetings. What is the village's emergency communications plan? Does the village have the ability to send emergency text alerts to notify residents when lights at intersections are out, when planned maintenance is scheduled that will cut off power and water, notification to residents when power is out and expected restoration time? Funding for outage prevention and grid resilience is a $7.5 million award to the state of Michigan every year for 5 years. Townships such as Shelby Township submitted a response to the RFP requesting money for EV charging stations, which I know was a priority of Franklin. Did we submit an RFP in response to that money? Request from the administration is to give an update at every council meeting on matters related to utilities and technology and establish said committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Joan Miller, 31010 Oakley Plain. It's just an update on the two wires that continue to hang over the, they're Comcast wires from going down in February. And I've been in contact with Comcast, and I got several job numbers. They were going to pursue it, take care of it. And when I didn't get any results, I called, and the number got lost, so they gave me another number. And I called again. And this time when I called, they suggested I go to a Comcast office on Southfield, which no one telegraphed. And I did do that, and they were very nice. They gave me a number. They said, this is the problem. We're going to take care of it. So on the 20th of March, Comcast came out. They verified it was their equipment. They said, we have to get the right people to come out. On the 21st, the very next day, another Comcast came out, and he took pictures, and he says, oh yeah, this is hazardous. This should be taken care of. The wires hang from, there's two of them, like from the wire there all the way to the ground. Today, my lawn people came, and they said, you gotta do something about that before we can do lawn work. So anyway, on the 30th of March, I called and I said, hey, what's the status? You've taken pictures, you said it's your, we don't have any record of this, so I'm back. I just want you to know, if you're considering Comcast for a cell tower, tell them to come to my house and fix that
Fix
first.
that first.
I'm sorry to take your time.
No.
It's
No,
just-
don't.
No, we
it's-
want to know that.
So,
Thank you.
Joan, thank you for coming back and talking about it. We should figure out
Roger,
what,
do you
Roger
have
needs
any,
to call them.
Roger, do you have any contacts, Roger Fraser?
Sir?
Do you have contacts with the Comcast that you can follow up on this?
We'll follow up on it, but we also have a cable board that is responsible for Comcast and Comcast behavior.
Hang on, we have a representative
And he's
here.
And he's in the audience. Rick, you want to see what you can do, please? Okay,
Okay.
okay.
can we make sure Joan does not have to come back for a third meeting?
But we like seeing Joan.
Pretty good about responding to issues like this. I'll make sure
Okay,
contacts right people.
Good.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Any other public comments?
He's leaving now.
Oh,
That's it for public comments? Okay, reports for village officers and agents. Dan Roberts, police report.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you have our written submission. I really don't have a lot to add in terms of the crime issues from last month. I did want to comment on a couple other things. The report itself was amended based on a request from Trustee Henke to include traffic stop data from broken down between Franklin and Bingham Farms, and that's reflected in the first paragraph there. It's kind of, it's not as simple as it looks, just because a traffic stop is not exactly equate to tickets. So traffic stops can be verbal warnings, for example. They don't have to be written a ticket. And just because somebody is stopped on a traffic stop, say they get stopped for speeding violation, they may end up getting also a violation for not having their license with them or not having proof of insurance or something like that. So it doesn't always equate equally to the number of tickets written. So in case you're going through and the numbers don't match up, that's why. There's a lot of nuances to it. And so if you ever have any questions about that, just give me a call and I'll be able to.
Telegraph Road is Bingham Farms.
Telegraph Road is Bingham
I'm
Farms.
surprised that it's not way, the Bingham Farms numbers aren't a lot higher.
Correct.
where, the traffic stops in Franklin, where is it, where are they, Wellington Scenic, where are we?
No, I would say vast majority are on Franklin Road. Inkster,
Inkster, I know.
Inkster is a racetrack, and so we sit on Inkster quite a bit. But Franklin Road and Inkster are probably the two biggest ones that we have an
Can
issue
you
with.
prioritize scenic and Franklin? Can you do that? No.
All the residents want us to target their street that they live on, so. So anyway, we did upgrade that, but if you have any questions about that, please feel free to give me a call at the station. I'll be glad to answer that for you. I know there were some mentions made earlier about DTE, and you all are probably going to discuss that tonight. I just did want to mention, there was an article in the Free Press a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you all saw it on a Sunday, big article about DTE and their response times and everything else. Well, on page 2 of that article was a half-page print of Franklin Police Department out on 13 Mile shutting down traffic for a line that was across the road. So it was a very well-done article about DTE and how it compares to other states in terms of their power providers. So you might want to take a look at that. It might be important for you because it does not paint DTE in a good light when compared to other states. But the best part for us was the cool picture of our sergeant out there with the police truck and shutting down 13 Mile with the snowstorm, the snow on the trees and all kinds of things. So we actually got permission from the photographer for the Free Press, and she sent it to us, and we're going to frame it and put it in our stations. 'Cause it's pretty cool picture. And it's in the newsletter. Okay. When did that? Oh, is it? Oh, okay, good. Oh, thank you, I appreciate that. Other than that, we had a ton of people out of town these last couple of weeks, so we've been doing house checks on vacation house checks. Fortunately, a lot of those folks have come back now, but over this past 3-day period, our officers did 130 house checks in Franklin and Bingham Farms, so they got dizzy walking around houses. So, but that's it, that's all I have unless you have questions for me.
Real quick question.
Yeah.
So I believe on Thursday, it was Thursday, DTE had a scheduled power outage for maintenance of their lines that took out the intersection of 13 and Franklin Road.
Right.
Did they provide any notice to you ahead of time?
None, but we saw that the intersection was down and we went out and put stop signs out there.
Yeah,
But we,
appreciate the work on that.
I didn't know if it was, we had no idea it was planned outing. I mean, if, it could have been, I assume, we just assumed that it was a line that came down or something, but
Yeah.
we did go out and put stop signs out at that intersection, but no, they don't, they're not good about coordinating with us either, so.
I
just so
appreciate
you
that.
know. Yeah.
They're pretty frustrating.
Yes, to us too, to law enforcement in general. They give us a separate law enforcement number to report things, but it really is, at the end of the day, not much better than anybody else's, so.
Chief, I got a couple of questions. So,
Sure.
a couple of the incidents, one was larceny for mail. Is that Porsche Pirates again?
No, that was actually some personal mail that was taken out of a mailbox and then subsequently used to create fictitious accounts in that person's name, in that resident's name.
And that was reported?
That was reported during the month, right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, was somebody found?
There was no loss that was suffered in that particular one because the credit companies caught it and stopped anything that happened there, so.
Very good. And there's also vehicle theft, UDAA, which I don't know what that is.
Yeah, it's the legal term for stealing a car, unlawful driving away of an auto. It's the Michigan statute for a stolen car, and that was taken from one of the buildings in Bingham Farms.
Yeah, I just asked district, I see.
Yes.
And then lastly, I see a dog at large. It says a person with the dog, so.
Yeah, what triggers that?
Multiple complaints on the same person.
Yeah.
This is a habitual offender that we have warned no less than a dozen times, and we had our fill of it and wrote that person a ticket.
So, yeah, so that was it takes multiple offenses.
Oh,
to get to that point. That's
absolutely, yes.
Okay, good.
Then the last unusual one, thank you, intimidation with a 911 call.
Yeah, I don't remember what that was. I'll have to look that up and get back to you.
Thank you.
Anything else for Dan? Good job, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Is Tony here?
No, he's not. He's out of town.
All right, no fire department report. Lance, treasurer?
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as the village treasurer. The bills list report for this month totals $201,510.39. The amounts on the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending, and the expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. The bills list for this month includes a large entry. There's a handful of entries, but I added them together of $27,117.45, and that's for emergency storm cleanup paid to Owen Tree Service. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations, and the list of account balances in the package is as of April the 1st. We hold at First Merchant Bank. The balances in interest-bearing insured CDs held at multi-bank securities is also included in the consolidated report. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Questions on the bills themselves, is that second?
That's the next thing, submission of current bills. Do we have a motion to approve the
A motion
bills
to
list?
approve. A motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Questions?
Okay, so I have one,
Go ahead.
one question that I have, and just, it's a curiosity with regarding the plowing of the roads, for example. It seemed like this was a very mild winter. We paid a lot for the trees being, the cutting of the trees and things, but it seems like it was a mild winter with less snow plowing and less salt. I'm not sure. It felt like that to me. I could be wrong.
There has been less snow plowing. and
So I'm
less
just
salt.
wondering, our agreement with the company that plows the streets, do we pay a yearly fee like I do for my home where they push 10 times and it's the same fee? Or do we pay per time that they plow?
We negotiated a contract with the contractor this last year that provides a minimum of X amount of dollars each month. And during the course of the year, there's a threshold that if he exceeds that threshold, he also submits to us a detailed report of all the work that they do. And we take a look at the two of those issues and compare them. And at some point, if he exceeds the threshold, the minimum threshold, then we pay him based on what he's actually done, but he has to do it for the whole year rather than any portion of it. So it doesn't get reconciled until the end of the season.
So it's not just snow plowing by itself, it's snow plowing, tree clearing, all of that, because it's the same company that does everything?
It's storm work.
Storm work.
Yep.
So
Got it.
of the $36,000 we paid to Jerry Johnson last month, how much of that was standard stuff and how much of it was storm cleanup?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I'll have to look that up.
So, that was sort of my question too. So even though it was Owen's job to deal with the storm cleanup, and they did on two different dates and on 5 different instances, Johnson also did some of that.
One of the things.
They hadn't been out yet. He was obviously closer to the.
Well, he was closer, and Owen was not as responsive as we would
Right,
wish.
initially, right. So,
And in fact, overall.
so that's why you've got it broken out here on that 310 payment.
Right.
The first one, the first 18, they just happen to both be 18. The first 18 was what we would normally pay for our
Right.
monthly landscaping, and the other was, so the 18 and 23, it's 41 and another 5, so it's gonna be almost 45, over 45,000.
A lot of work that was done as a
Right.
consequence.
Well, because again, we're trying to get our hands around it, we're also trying to get our hands around having this in the budget for the future, because again, this isn't reflected in what we just did for the last 6 months' budget.
No.
So when you say that Owen didn't do anything with regard to the storms,
I didn't say that.
okay, it's slow, and then to the extent of whatever, the amount, so for the ice storms, what was the services that they performed?
Well, the primary reason that we have a contract with Owen was to, and our traditional provider asked to not be responsible for emergency response in the middle of the night. And that was what Owen was contracted to do. Our disappointment has been that we had difficulty getting a hold of Owen to respond to us during those emergencies.
Okay.
And we've talked to him about it, but the fact is that
Is there a resolution?
I'm just asking because we have the 316 entries for 20,000, just over $20,000, and it's all with regard to emergency, so if they failed to perform emergency services, that's why I'm asking what they rendered.
I'd have to go back and look at those details. But the fact is that they were in town during the time of cleanup. And when we still had streets that were covered with trees and that sort of thing. It's not that they weren't here.
Just weren't here the first night.
And it was the reliability of their service.
Right. The whole idea wasn't to hire them to come back and eventually clean it up. We got that covered. We need
Right.
them to be there when it's the middle of the night, and we need them immediately.
Correct.
So
And
is there a resolution on that for the future? Are they gonna be more responsive? they're gonna
I
be?
can't answer that
Yeah,
yet.
I mean,
We're going to have a
that's-
hearty conversation about
You
it.
haven't had that yet.
We need to have that conversation and figure that
Yeah,
out. Right.
one thing I do want to say, though, is that Johnson Landscaping has been wonderfully responsive.
Yeah.
And I believe that they've kicked butt in terms of getting out there, having people in place, having their equipment in shape, and being able to take on a whole bunch of stuff. And our interaction with Johnson Landscaping during this has been great.
Yeah, there's no questions against Johnson. He specifically asked us, I don't want to have to do that service, hire someone else. We did, and they don't do their job, then it's not on Jerry by any stretch.
Well, in the night of the storm that devastated the village, and we had trees down and roads blocked all over the place, Dan was out with a chainsaw himself, so was Tony, and so was Jerry.
Understood.
They, actually, some of his folks worked 24 hours straight.
Yeah, this is an Owens
Right.
Tree Service contract analysis, and to hire someone that's too busy to do the job that they're to do, so we get the bottom of the barrel, means get someone else.
Yep, got that.
I think that might open us up to rebid. If I recall, it's a 3-year contract. And if they can't provide the service,
Right, fill your-
they can't fulfill.
Absolutely.
So I think we should consider some different plan next
I
year.
do too.
Because shame on us if we let it go for a second year.
Sure.
Agree.
Well,
This is our
I
first
think-
time, and they failed.
So I would add to our list of things to do, is let's reconsider that, a new supplier next year.
That's certainly on my list of things to do.
Good,
Good.
excellent.
Okay.
I just have a couple things if.
Go ahead.
So I see that the nice generator we installed last year, we paid $380 to top off oil. So
I'm sorry?
we had installed these nice generators in the last 12 months.
Yes.
Here, and we paid $380 for them to come out and top out the oil. So I'll volunteer to top off oil on the generator for less than $380.
Well, don't forget the oil to top it off. Costs
I
us
will
an
donate it
additional
to the village,
190.
frankly.
Yeah.
But
For the actual oil.
you know, it kills me that we just spent like $30K to put these generators in. I don't understand why it ran low, probably triggered an alarm, then why we have to pay $380 for that. So that's unacceptable to me. So,
Fair question.
Both generators?
well, it looks like one went off, had a low alarm, and then they spent $190 to come here visit,
Yep.
put in a couple of quarts and left.
Yeah, from this breakdown, the way that I'm reading it, and maybe it is based off of 2 generators, but one is for the actual service and then the other one is for the materials.
Yeah, but that's insane. So I think we should ask Joe Isaac, who put this in. I want to credit back for the $380, frankly.
Mark, I have a generator, and I pay $150 a year for annual maintenance. Is that the annual maintenance thing?
No, it says
Or
emergency
is it-
visit.
That's what it says, but is it, is
Does it
it,
count as?
I doubt it. I'm guessing it ran so long that it hit the emergency level, shut off.
So-
And we had to did we have the generators shut off and not work at any point?
Yes.
That's what happened.
Bill, I'll do yours for $150 too. I have to do that.
you gotta change the spark plug too.
I can do that.
Well, and frankly, the one that's outside here broke down last year, and they had to put a whole new engine in it.
Oh my God, it's brand
And
new.
they did not
It's
charge
brand
us
new.
for that. Pardon?
They didn't charge us for
No.
that because it was brand new warranty. Good,
Yep.
good.
Mark, do you have other questions?
I have one more.
Yep.
So I see a few lines down on 324, we got a CDBG reimbursement. So did Next not spend the money? How do we get $3,500 back from Next?
They didn't spend it.
So,
Well, this year we did not, from the CDBG funds, none of our CDBG went next, I believe.
well, but this is a credit from last year.
Yeah.
This is last
So,
year's stuff.
I'm gonna remember this next year, because they come here asking for money, they don't spend it.
No, this is an
This is us
expense.
giving them the
This is,
$3,500
we gave them the money from last year.
I'm sorry, I read backwards. All right, very good. I read it
We
backwards.
split it
These are all
between-
expenditures.
All right, I read it backwards.
Right.
That's on me. Very good.
Right.
I have a couple of questions
Sure.
on this. So, 310 entry, second page essentially. The 400 for copier lease, so do we lease the copier in the village
Yes.
to the tune of 400 a month?
No, I don't believe it's 400 a month, but I couldn't tell you the exact period.
Okay. And does that come with maintenance to
Yes.
it? Does come with maintenance to it. One of the things, I don't know that it's hooked up to like the internet, to be able to use the scanner to scan documents out if needed. That might be something we, as part of their maintenance, have them do.
I believe that when we scan, we do it from our laptops, and the computers can produce an electronic file that goes back to the copy, or the machine, and we send it out along with information or whatever else.
So you have an attachment to your laptop to scan?
We can do it, we send it to the computer to scan. It scans and sends the data back to the computer.
I'm not following.
I've noticed that $400 is bothering me
Just
every time.
using
I
your
see it.
scanner at home.
Where
But,
does
no,
Your computer's
that's,
hooked up to the-
that's the scanner, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
That does
And
not,
the computer's hooked up to this,
Okay, so I had to scan a document for the village. I tried to send it to my email, and it said it wasn't able to do that.
Because you had to be at Dana's computer to get in the email.
It can be part of our network.
Okay.
Yeah, it won't scan to an email, it scans to a computer.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
But I've noticed the $400
Yes.
every month too, and bothers me. That's a lot of money, I think.
Well, what would it cost to just
To
buy
just
it
buy
and
the
have it
printer.
maintained, buy the machine?
Or a copier.
And do we get a new machine every so often? Do they?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured as part of the lease
Right.
process, like a car,
Right.
once the new models come out.
But regardless, we should look at, if that's not monthly, what are we paying on it? What is the cost of one of these machines? So,
Leader Business Systems is owned by Carl Leader, who's a village resident, and we've gotten super prices from that.
Oh, yeah, it's not a question of
but we
that.
can still do the
Super
due diligence.
service. And,
You
yep,
could easily sell it to us too.
Yep.
I don't know which is better for us.
Yeah.
okay. Anything else?
Yeah, one other thing. Well, there's a duplicate on here. So 3/24/23 Comcast Internet to Krieger, $200, $1.45, and then that is listed on 3/16/2023 for the same amount. Both of them are March of 2023 for internet.
It one's to different places?
No, they're both Krieger House. So I just don't know why they're billed at separate places, or why it appears twice.
Which ones were those?
Yeah, the first one is 3/16/2023.
See
Okay,
it now.
Comcast, the number is 487E. And then the second one is 3/24/2023, 493E Comcast Internet to Krieger House, March 2023,
That's great.
billed to the
That's
same
good.
amount. So that's just,
Maybe it's a typo and one's February, but check it
yeah,
out.
let's just make sure we didn't get billed
Right.
twice.
Right.
I have two more thoughts, I'm sorry. First, I struggled paying $200 every month to internet at the Krieger House. I have no idea at all if we're getting any bang for the buck for that. That's a pretty high premium just to sit across there. I do not understand why we're paying $200 a month for that.
Yeah, my personal feeling is, and I can bring this up during your report, Roger, but I would like to see like a list of who's rented and for what purposes at the Krieger House to figure out the utility of continuing to pay out $200 a month on it.
There's no shortage of amenities we could pack into that place, but I don't think we get the bang for the buck, so that's a thought as we talk about finances. Last question I had, a question for you, Roger. On 3/16, we paid almost $400 for the new radar system and the new police vehicle. If that's the Bingham Farms police vehicle, which is the new one, they probably should have carried that cost, I think. They pay for that vehicle, that $390.
Those additional costs associated with a particular vehicle, to the extent that they're not part of the purchase but part of the equipment, are shared as a percentage of our overall cost for police services. It's split between the village and Bingham Farms.
I recall from the contract that they cover all costs associated with that vehicle. So, but we can talk about it offline. I'm good.
Okay, any other questions? So you have a motion and a second to approve the current bills. All in favor, aye?
All right.
Opposed, nope. Okay, special reports. In terms of my report, I just want to talk a little bit about wireless service. The committee that we put together has had a couple meetings. We met with T-Mobile and with AT&T, and it's a fairly productive, good news out of both of them. Both are moving forward with plans to add more cells to the distributed antenna system. They'll actually be small cells, which is a variant of what we have. T-Mobile is, I don't have exact timing, but T-Mobile is a lot further along than AT&T is. But AT&T was very open and honest and listened to us. And they need to get their business plan together and approved. And so I feel pretty good about both of those. We've talked to Verizon. Verizon says we're good, we don't need to do anything, so that's kind of where we are with Verizon. One issue we did raise with both is fiber optics, and which is a side issue from wireless service, that it would be nice to have a fiber optic network in town. It's a tough sell. We really didn't get a commitment, and it's something that we may want to look at grant opportunities or whatever, if that's the direction we want to go. But help from T-Mobile and AT&T is probably minimal. They'll put in the fiber optics that they need to operate their system, but that's it. So that could be a good alternative to our friend Comcast too. So that's my report.
Was there an idea of how many nodes you were talking about?
At least 6 for each carrier.
So 6 more. We have 6 currently,
We have
right?
6 currently, so it'll double the number, right?
And did they give you ideas as to where?
Yes. They're in different places. It's interesting because AT&T was more the center of town. Both of them hit between Telegraph and Franklin Road a little. T-Mobile hit Inkster Road a lot more and South 13 Mile a lot more. So, but again, their decisions were based on the service their service measurements and where they need the help, so.
I have a couple
Go ahead.
questions. One is just a procedural question. I had requested that we have a regular agenda item under old business for cell update. The cell committee update, because
As a standing item.
as a standing item, I would thank you for your report. I would like to understand that whatever we're hearing is from the committee and that it should be a progress report. And this isn't enough. It's about a couple of conversations and I don't have enough context to know what to do with that data. Like, are we moving forward? When are we going to have improved cell service? And how are we going to measure if we have it or not? How are we going to know if the cell service to our residents has actually improved since this committee started work about 18 months ago? I am also mindful of the fact that, we've got one of our residents here who's pushing us to create a committee or a commission to oversee getting things done, basically. And this, to me, is an example of why residents, 130 or however many residents signed a petition, that we're not moving fast enough on this. So I'd like to know that this is the committee's position, what the committee has been doing, and what's next.
And we talked
I'm not
about this.
criticizing you, it's
We
just-
talked about this in the committee and decided the best alternative is a short report that I would do. The other committee members are certainly welcome to chime in, and
I would support-
David, and
I would support a standing item on here with,
I'm all for it.
with, here are the 5 things we're working on, here's the 5 companies we're working with, here's what they're committing to, here's the deliverables to it, some measure of success.
Yeah.
Does this answer all the residents' complaints? How many are we hitting? Are we hitting half of them, part of them? We don't know yet. So-
That's exactly what I want. And some context for people like me who don't live there. I'm relying on you every month, and I think about other things between council meetings, and also for residents who tune in or don't, and don't have the continuity. So it's really maybe a more robust, like you said, review and tell me what's coming up next, what'd you do, what's next, and when is it gonna be done?
And it's easier to formulate in our minutes for residents to review.
Anyway,
I have no problem with that. To further update on what Bill said, in the course of last month, we have now met with AT&T and T-Mobile both, have had pretty open and honest discussions about how do you fix in the village with small cells / DAS versus cell towers? I think, it's taken, we've come a long way in with regard to how these carriers view the village of Franklin. Because up until the last couple of years, we were considered, against anything that has to do with enhanced cell service through cell towers. Our ordinances were considered, to be anti-cell tower, even though they don't even necessarily say that. So, in our meetings with them, and I think this last meeting with AT&T and then, with T-Mobile and then with AT&T, they're having open dialogue now. They recognize that we come to them saying, look, we just want to fix it with whatever's best. And unfortunately, the conclusion that I think even myself has come to, which is what we've all envisioned, is if we were going to have to do it with a cell tower, it would be to put it in the center of the village here where we're now high up. But that in and of itself, from what they've told us, will not do it. Because a cell tower does not cover 2 square miles of coverage. They at best can do 1 mile, and they don't even do that even
That's
very
really
well.
interesting
So,
information.
our problem isn't in the center of the village. So we've asked them, and I can tell you that for the first time in our last meeting, we had 3 gentlemen from AT&T. And again, I'm finally feeling that they're like openly speaking with us as opposed to speaking in this code. And, they've pretty much so said, we asked them, so we have these cell towers around the outskirts of the village. Why don't they help us better than they do? And he explained to us, and if everyone looks, every cell tower has 3 of those transmitters on it. Each one covers about 120 degrees. That's why there's 3 of them. But yeah, none of the ones around us are pointed at us. They're pointed at the areas that they're designed to service. So we could put one in the village that pointed directly at us, and we've asked them, hey, can you tweak it a little and have it kind of face us? And that was what somebody had mentioned to us that we discussed at the last meeting. So this guy from AT&T really explained to us, yeah, it's covering 120 degrees, but it's parabolic, and if you're at the outside of the angle and not on the end, it affects us more. They have also, really educated us on their, I guess, willingness to engage we call it a DAS system, which is what we have now, which are those cones on an on a traditional telephone pole. We've been driving around looking at the various things that they have in other areas. And what I think we're transitioning to, and what this last thing from T-Mobile showed us where they plan on either both replacing the existing DAS nodes and then adding new small cells, is I think the hybrid of what we're going to get is going to be a small cell system. And a small cell system is essentially, I want to call it a hybrid in the sense of it's higher up. So instead of being in the 30-foot range, it's going to be more in the 50 or 60-foot range. But it'll still be on a telephone pole. So you'll still see telephone pole. The telephone pole will just go higher. It'll still have a thing at the top. It'll be white, maybe a little brighter white than the sort of the cone that's kind of that nasty, it's faded colored cones that we have. But they believe that those small cells, they cover even a bigger area. We've been dealing with the whole health concern thing of things. We believe that at least if we were able to keep them on telephone pole looking things, so that when you drive down the street, you still only see a telephone pole, not some metal structure. And pushing that higher up would hopefully help. Those concerns, although even the carriers themselves say those are minimal, but we still have to address them, that they're out there. So that pushes things higher in the air. And we now have T-Mobile, which just sent Bill literally 2 days ago after our meeting with them about a month and a half ago, hey, here's what we're now doing. We're doing all these They're really hammering Inkster Road, they're doing a little on Northwestern Telegraph, 2 in the village. The fact that they're doing that now allows us to say, yeah, guys, you know, based on what we saw, maybe if you did like 3 in the village, added, you know, 2 more to cover 1 over here and 1 over there, which should maybe get full coverage, better coverage from them. So T-Mobile is definitely the most engaged right now. AT&T, who we just met with, was the most transparent that they've ever been, and fully acknowledged that they're willing to work with us on a small cell system. I'm not really getting, the AT&T people discussed a lot about federal money and state money that was now available, usually on like a 75-25% deal. So that is definitely something that we should look into if we only have to potentially pony up 25% of certain costs. So I would say that we're finally seeing some progress from T-Mobile and AT&T. Bill is correct. Verizon remains very staunch, very pragmatic in the sense of we know what we know and we don't really care what you think, or we don't think that what you're telling us really is correct. When we would show our data to the other carriers, they'd say, yeah, I mean, that kind of jives up with what we have. I mean, yeah, we definitely, you know, get better service around those nodes. So it's pretty clear that those nodes do work. We just need more of them and the kind that cover more area. Unless something drastically changes, I'm gonna say we're probably not gonna be pursuing a cell tower in the center of Franklin, as long as these carriers are willing to continue on this path of helping us get it fixed this way, and not saying, well, if you do it that way, you have to pay for it.
Yeah, I hear that.
What are the chances that they're gonna put in, we talked about the cell towers, but we're not in the coverage zone so much. Did they further say that they would be interested, be willing to do that, to fix the angle directed towards us?
Haven't had that dialogue with them, and
A lot of what they're doing
that's
is,
gonna convince them to convince those other areas to get lesser.
They can't put another one in?
most of their customers are on Telegraph Road or Northwestern. That's where they make their money.
And that's where they're
Makes
focusing those
And
signals.
I
we
understand.
benefit from being close to those 2 roads, but we're not the central focus. I would be shocked if they make big changes in the
I don't
the
anticipate.
Seems
tower
like, why
system.
can't you add another one? If there's 3 of them up
I'm
there,
not-
why can't they put a 4th one?
We can raise that issue. but
I would
I-
love to talk about it.
Because T-Mobile is the furthest along, have they delivered any ETAs to
Nope,
Progress?
nobody's talking ETAs yet.
Okay.
And one last question or comment. A part of our discussion last month was that Bloomfield, a new revelation at the time was that Bloomfield Township had DAS nodes and had like 34 of them or something, and we had 6. Did somebody was going to follow up with them to find out how it was working? Did anybody have a chance to do that and talk with
Pete was into that one.
So I did speak with Andrea, their Deputy Director of Planning. So her focus was mainly with what their ordinance says, and I do have copies of the ordinance, and I've read them. That was one of the questions I asked AT&T, if they're familiar with the Bloomfield ordinance, since they were active there not too long ago. But the real question that I would love to get more information on would be how did it come about? We're still dealing with that issue of motivating them to come and do this. And I wasn't able to get the backstory on, did they just appear and ask to put in towers, and well, they were actually small cells. But I do have a lot of information on what their ordinances are like. So
Thank you.
They have about 15 DAS towers that were put in exactly the same time ours are put in 2011, I think it was. So, and that was a lot of AT&T's motivation is, hey, there are more of them up there. They work better. Let's do the same at Franklin and increase the density, so.
Okay.
Right.
And the thought is replacing the current ones as well as
I-
putting new ones in?
We have not gotten a commitment to replace the current ones yet. We're adding, we'll have to.
Keep working on
get to
that.
Right,
That would be great.
right.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
Okay, very good. Any other council members have reports? Comments?
I have one question. It's really an observation question for Roger, and I know we're only a few weeks removed from all the snow being gone, but I just happened to do the turnaround at Telegraph and 13 Mile a couple times a day. So, like, who's responsible for all the trash that's in the Telegraph right away? The 13 Mile Road right away? Franklin Road's not so bad, a couple little things here and there, but Franklin Road actually looks much better than the two. Telegraph is a disaster right now.
So you're talking about on Telegraph, just the
Just
median?
right on the right of way. I'm not even talking like back far enough that it would be, I know how far the right of way is on Telegraph Road. That thing goes well beyond where the garbage is, let's just say that. So who does that? I mean, is that Bingham? Is that MDOT? Is that us? And we get, like, who cleans that out? It looks so bad.
My understanding is that the median is done by the state.
Not the median.
Not the median.
It's the edge.
It's the edge.
Yeah, so if you do the turnaround at 13, if you're gonna come around to go right, you know,
Yes.
to go west, you're just staring there, it's like, it looks like a war zone.
And Mark raised this issue with me a few weeks ago, and I drove the Telegraph from 14 south to 13 to look at what was there in the brush, basically.
Exactly.
And it needs cleanup.
Definitely.
We haven't budgeted that here.
So that would be on us? That's not our
I
right of way.
believe it is.
So it's not a right of way.
It's
Somebody
their right.
drives
It's
down there and
Bingham's
gets
right of
pulled
way.
over.
No, I'm
Chief pulls
talking
someone
about,
over and
I'm
gets a
talking about
ticket.
west side of Telegraph Road between 14 and 13.
Yeah.
Right.
Still not our right of way. We don't own that land. It's not our land. It's Bingham Farms land. If somebody
Right.
gets pulled over on Bingham Road right
Right.
there as they're turning around and they pay a ticket, none of that money comes to us. That money goes to Bingham. So can Bingham help pay for the cost of maintaining what I consider their right of way?
I'll have to look at that.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, real quick, just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to all the virtual guests today. It's nice that we're able to deliver the virtual streaming and the live streaming, so thank you to everybody that's helped make that possible.
Is that announced? Does everybody even, like,
It was,
I guess
so.
you'd have to be watching to know.
Yeah,
but-
exactly. So again, this is our first meeting that we've had live streaming.
Read the newsletter.
And it was in the newsletter. And so thank you, Dana, for posting that in the newsletter and having it at the top. So it was nice and prominent. And then I also wanted to share when Chief Roberts was up, I had brought up the fact that DTE had a scheduled outage, and I just wanted to convey my experience as to how I knew that it was a planned outage. Is immediately when it went off, I looked across the street and saw lights flashing, the orange lights flashing for a maintenance truck and a spotlight up in the air. So I assumed that it was a down power line. And so I drove over to it and then turned around. By the time I had turned around, the maintenance truck was gone. So then I went up Franklin Road. And at that point, I had realized that the intersection lights were completely off. The stop signs weren't there yet. So I assumed that our police department had not been contacted. But as I was coming up Franklin Road, they had already had all of the construction cones out, and they had already had the signage that said traffic down to one lane. And so what my concern is not only had they scheduled this outage, but they've also inhibited or they reduced our traffic down to one lane without contacting our village. This to me is a perfect example of what I was saying with regard to the Public Utility Commission, as well as what I believe was part of the motivation for the 130 people who had signed that, which is we do not have the power to control DTE because it's a private company, it's a public utility, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing that we can do. We can try and hold them accountable, we can try and improve communication, and we're going to continue to exhaust ourselves unless we leverage the people within the village to assist us with these type of things, with these communication strategies to the people, because, for instance, we know several families who are relying on medical devices, and when it is possible to avoid an outage, or at least give people the opportunity for notice of the outage so that they can make additional plans, There's no reason when it's scheduled that we should strand people in their own homes or force them to go to a neighbor's house who fortunately has a generator. This is something that, again, is avoidable, and I strongly urge that we listen to the 130 plus people that were accumulated over 11 days to not settle on status quo and continue to push ourselves on what are the small improvements that we can make to make our village residents' lives better. Thank you.
I have one issue. So, and Roger, I'm not looking for an answer right now, but I heard Jeff come up and speak earlier, upset about what's happening in his home. Sounds like he's been complaining for a long time. Some communication between yourself and Peter and Bill Dinnan. It's not the first time we've heard complaints about lack of communication, lack of responsiveness. So what I'm interested in starting to do is understand what phone calls from residents are coming in and log them in some manner, and what's the resolution? Because frankly, this first I had heard about this issue, but obviously it's been going on for a year and a half or so. So I'm interested in, not tonight, but next month, how can we better log and track complaints from residents that we have that we get our arms around it about what's going wrong?
And
I'm not looking for an answer now, but let's address it next month.
Mark, to that point, again, it came up in our workshop last month. And again, it is a delicate balance of not micromanaging the staff, but at the same time, like the administrator report, if we're not getting updates of what the complaints are coming in, then the administrative report would be a great opportunity for once a month, like, here is what we're hearing, so that we can be mindful. And maybe it needs to be before then, because then they have to wait another month before we can even have a discussion on council. But I'm totally with you.
No resident should have to come up here
100%.
hoping for some help, so that's.
And you can hear it in his voice.
So what I'd like to do is have some sort of solution. You know, people are calling the office or calling Bill Dinnan, not being resolved. For every Jeff that stood up here tonight, there may be 10 more out there that are complaining and don't have the ability to come here. So we should figure out how to start tracking, get our arms around it.
Let me just say this. Any citizen can come in and give you their own interpretation of what's happened without us necessarily taking them on in a public forum about the amount of time, effort, and work that we've done, money that we've spent, trying to remedy their concerns. And this was not the time nor the place to have that conversation with you. And there are a number of things that I would not do in terms of our responses to citizen complaints and have it resolved or spoken of in a public forum. I wouldn't do it.
That's totally fine, but, you know.
But you asked for, and you've asked for some sort of a litany on an ongoing basis of how we deal with citizen complaints. And I would just tell you, there's lots of things that we can talk about that we've done that everybody's very happy about. But there's also going to be a certain number of those that are done where they're not happy. And frankly, there's some that we cannot appease.
So, and I recall we had an issue last year with a different house, a different water trouble between two neighbors. I remember that, visiting those houses. Having data, having facts, you know, this is not the time to argue with the person coming in for the first 2 minutes, right? But it'd give us some context. Oh yeah, there's been 15 communications between us. These are the things that have been done. It's fair for us to understand what is the true context. We don't get that. All we hear are 2 minutes from this person who's upset, clearly upset. So I'm asking for some ways to get better context for us, what the backgrounds are for these things going on.
On everything we do?
Well, I'm not asking.
Hang on, he's asking.
Real
quick, you're asking for professional discretion, right? Like it goes back to what I had just said. There's status quo, and then there's incremental improvements. We had somebody come and speak publicly about how they don't feel that there's been transparency, that they don't feel that they've been helped, and not a single one of us have heard of this issue before. And so there has to be a happy medium between you telling us every single thing that you hear about, or aggregating it out and say we have a personal dispute, or we have heard 4 or 5 complaints about the same thing, because us as policymakers have to make a determination and set priorities for the village of what is redressable and what's not. And we also have to take the heat that if we're not going to redress it, that part of that is going to fall on us, regardless of whether ultimately you execute on that type of stuff. We are the public faces for the village, and not having that type of visibility does not provide us the opportunity to have a conversation with the public about what they're going through.
So what I'm asking for, Roger, is just a plan. What do you propose to address?
I'll have to give that some thought.
I
Thank
think
you.
what
That's all
we're
I'm
really
asking.
looking for is the issues that haven't been resolved and the potential problems. If they're resolved,
And
then
that's
we're
not what I'm
happy.
asking for. That is not what I'm asking for. Don't speak for me, please. I'm asking for Roger to make a plan. That's it. We have an unknown number of people coming and complaining. We don't know. And I want some context about what's going on. So I'll let you make a plan and we'll talk about it then.
I don't, if it's resolved amicably and everyone's happy, let it go. Don't create a lot of work.
That's not what I'm asking.
I think
That's
you
not
are.
what I'm asking.
Okay.
Bill, embedded in his plan could be what you're saying. He's just asking for a plan.
Yeah.
What works?
Well, I understand the issue you're raising, but what about those of us that have been very satisfied with what they've done? I had an issue last week regarding water. I came in on Thursday, and by Friday morning, it got resolved.
So,
All right. No,
But
and
then
that's
by an
great.
overall log that did show everything would allow
Yes.
us to understand that, yes, maybe it is only 3% of the items that are slipping through the cracks or that people aren't happy about. So that then reflects better on Rogers. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think
That's
that all
exactly
goes
what I'm
as part of
asking
the
for.
plan. It isn't just to identify bad things going on, it is also help identify appropriate things that are going on.
That's it, you know, I think.
That is correct.
You gotta balance it. You're never gonna hear the positive aspects, you're gonna hear the
Absolutely,
negative.
you're 100% right.
And I
You
think
only
if
hear
you're
complaints.
gonna have that, the way you're talking about this report, I'm afraid it's gonna, you know, like you say, we'll be able to judge Roger, and there's so many positive things you're doing.
It could be
So-
as simple as just writing it down on a list, and then that list
Yeah.
is available to council.
David is on the money. What are the things coming in, the good things, the bad things? We're gonna have 1% of 10, 1% of 50, I don't know. But if 49 out of 50 things resolved quickly in 24 hours, that is a fantastic measure of how we're performing. We have no measure yet. We just don't. I'm asking Roger what would that look like? What's the best way to portray how we're responding to our citizens? I don't know what that looks like, so I'm asking for a proposal.
Okay, let's work on something, talk about next month, so. Okay. Any other council reports? Pete Halleck, you want to talk about planning, anything to say? I'm sorry.
He's got a chance.
Oh, sit down, Pete. Roger's turn. Roger Fraser, Administrator's Report.
One of the things that I'm going to just skip a little ahead on our Main Street report, introduce David Leclerc. David is the gentleman who was helping Dana here a few minutes ago. Dana is our new Economic Development Main Street Coordinator. He has an interesting career in a variety of fields, most of it in banking. And he has an unbridled enthusiasm for the opportunities that exist in this village to do cool stuff in a place that he really thought highly of before he ever came here. So I'm delighted to have David here as a part of our staff. Today, it was sort of interesting because we were short because of illness in the front office, and he wound up answering the phone. And it was interesting to hear him handling the phone calls, particularly in those areas where he hadn't a clue what he was talking about. So, yeah.
Welcome.
So,
David, welcome to the village, and Roger has hyped you highly, so we have high expectations for you.
I'll try to make it up that pedestal somehow, and I am glad to be here, and there is a lot of opportunity here. So, thank you. I look forward to having conversations with each and every one of you over the next couple weeks. I want to hear your expectations, your wish list, and how we bring better customer service to our community, our business community. I'll give you an example. We had somebody call on the Van Avery building today, and we're looking at how we can accommodate some of the needs to make it happen that they're looking to do. And so, sorry, it's not some of the establishments we're looking to bring, but that doesn't mean we're not going to bring all the high-level items that we're looking for, like a market and a a coffee shop, which is real high on my list, so I'm looking for good coffee, so.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay,
That's it, Bill. Thanks.
Roger, is that it?
Yep.
Now, Pete Halley, Planning Commission.
So, good evening. I've got a small list of things I can update you on. You'll be doing your reading of the horse ordinance a little later, and we've made some language changes to that. Nothing really of substantive change. We also have the chicken and duck ordinance. We did do something significant there and worth mentioning. There were language changes and also fence height parameters that we laid out. Essentially, we made them the same as we have for our garden enclosures, which is a fairly tall fence, but we felt that it's consistent and appropriate for a pen. Third, we have our burning ordinance, which we struck some language there. We eliminated the nuisance language. That made sure the fire pit was in the proper section. The one significant discussion we had was on the tree canopy. I guess our commission had concerns. We voted on this and felt that it was worth keeping in for safety reasons, that we should not have, it's not all burning, it's just leaf and branch burning should not be done under a canopy. And again, you know, we can amend that during your reading if you feel that that would be best taken out. I know that was the direction that we got from you. And after our discussion, the majority decision was to leave it in, see how you felt about it again. I guess it's potentially significant. We reviewed
I did.
the Wealth Track site plan for their revision, and in the process of doing that, it seems like they've sort of changed what they had on their plan, so we asked them to resubmit that, and Chris is going to work with them a little bit to see if they can define a little better what they want to do. You'll also be looking at the lighting ordinance, and we've made changes to that. We had a second hearing, so it's ready for your attention. And lastly, we have our master plan. So Chris has submitted that. I don't know if it's made it into your packets. Okay,
Gotta get
so-
legal first.
Okay, so it's still in that phase of the process?
We need to prepare the appropriate document for council to consider.
Okay, okay. Perhaps next meeting?
Right.
Something, all right, great. So you'll be seeing that, at least getting that into your hands soon. So if you don't have any questions, that's it. Yep, Pam?
Thank you, Pete. I have a quick question that's just tangential to the master planning, master plan issue. When the Planning Commission Chair presented the previous master plan, 2015-ish, I think it was, we got into a bit of a tussle about who owns the master plan and what is actually required legally in the state of Michigan from the council. Is council approval required, or is this a planning commission document? I don't know that that was actually ever resolved. Might be that I don't know, but my request is that you take a look at that. If you don't know the answer, and ask legal committee to weigh in on that so we know what we're approving.
Sure.
And
Yeah, no, I'm sure Chris can find that out too. We just,
yeah, it was very testy and people were wounded in the process of that discussion.
okay.
Is it
So,
something that the council actually has to approve, or is the planning commission in the purview, or is the master plan in the purview of the planning? commission?
exactly, and therefore, what is our role in reviewing this?
Or do we just take it?
Or do we just
I
accept
mean,
it?
obviously, from our perspective, we'd love your feedback.
When I say
On any,
legal, it
on
doesn't
any
need to go to legal
underlying.
for us to review it from a legal standpoint. It needs to go to legal so that we can see that it's, does what it does, and we don't have any major questions, that it doesn't come here and get wasted, time
Right,
wasted.
right.
Not
Yeah.
to do a legal review of it.
And my
That-
request
The
is,
legal committee sets the agenda, so that's what I'm saying. Before it's gonna get on the agenda, I gotta see a document. We haven't seen the
Right.
document.
yeah,
Right,
and
right.
I want enough time to review it, because it's a
Correct,
big,
that's the point. If it's a huge
document.
thing, it's gonna not be,
Yeah.
we get our stuff on, we discussed the Monday before, it'll probably be the month after, so that
Right.
we can get it in people's hands for a whole month.
exactly.
And I mean, to make it easy, it wasn't a major revision. It was a kind of a light go over, so everything's underlined. You'll be able to see any language that
You
is
guys did a
changed.
great job vetting it out. It's just, if it's ready to go, yeah, just get it to legal, we'll get
It's
it on the
there,
agenda.
yeah. Okay.
We have to pick an agenda when it's, I'd like an answer to that question, because I don't want to spend a lot of time picking it apart if in fact our comments aren't really even
Yeah.
supposed to be there. So I would like to get an answer to the question of whether, whose purview it is.
I will say that there's one item in there that I think I'd love to get feedback on. And I mentioned it at the last meeting. We put some language in there about 14 Mile Road.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Pete, one last thing, and you and I had discussed it briefly before, but I would like to encourage that we have not brand-new ordinances, but ordinances that amend one that is pre-existing.
Right.
If we could develop a one-pager that would outline what the changes are, so that we can circulate that to the
Yeah.
community to get interest for, like, if they want to attend the meeting for comment.
Right. So we did discuss it. There's a bit of a challenge. I mean, I've always been a proponent of having some English simple
Yeah.
language description. I mean, I guess there's a legal aspect to it because you don't want to be misleading or leave out something that you need to say. So I guess we need to get a little bit of input from a legal background,
Or
whether
track changes. Just give us that document.
Well, I'm
There
saying,
it is.
what I would love to see is, we don't get a ton of participation at the planning commission when they're seeking public comment with regard to changes that are gonna be updated. And that's because a lot of people, and maybe I'm wrong on this assumption, but a lot of people don't have a lot of time to sit down, or maybe the education to sit down and really understand what are the changes that are being proposed. And so if we're able to get a very plain language document that's just bullet points of, here's what's changing from what is your life today to what is your life tomorrow, and then that would give them an opportunity to go to the planning commission to have a discussion about whether they're for or against.
I guess the possibility might be, without belaboring it, Chris's memos,
Yeah, I was just gonna say that.
do the
Exactly.
summary.
Chris's memos are
Because-
pretty good.
Right, and it needs to come out after we've done our work to some extent. But we could get it out quickly and make it more publicly viewable, perhaps?
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
Okay,
It really would.
all right, we'll work on it.
Yeah, and again, David, I'm gonna go back to, and I'm on board with you in the whole getting everything out, but getting it out also means helping yourself. And everything can't just be handed to you. You need to be a little proactive. Get us the web, I'm gonna preach it again. How many people have gotten Dana their email addresses over the last 3 months, since over the course of the last 3 months, I've said this over and over and over. I'm curious how many people have actually reached out to you to increase that. Okay, so in 3 months, one person out there has contacted Dana to get them their email address. Chris's memos are phenomenal. He bullet points everything. He says exactly the changes. We don't always get the changes from the beginning to the end, which that might be something I think that would be helpful, is when we've got to the final document, and you can do it with Word, just do a comparison from original ordinance to final version, because we keep getting them as they're changing.
Right.
But those are all in the agendas online, they're in the minute packets online.
Right, right.
It is out there to get, if you take the time to go find it.
And does that include Chris's memos?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what, in the same vein, after we approve something, how do people know that what we've approved? I think that we have it, a little click on here to see. I would love to see, say we approve the duck and we have the garden and we have the horse. Say these are all approved. I'd love there to be something on the page that says, here are all the things that we've worked on. Click on these things and you can see these new ordinances that we have. Suddenly now horses are allowed in Franklin again when they really weren't. And I think I'd like to highlight, market, almost advertise some of these options, because I think that brings people back to the community who maybe chose Bloomfield Hills instead of choosing here
Good point.
because they could have horses and we can't.
And that's a good point, and that's a great spot for your annual report, which I think has only been in place now for 2 years. Maybe work on getting that out
That's true.
sooner than already now in April of '23. Have Chris working on that in
Yeah,
January, so that,
we've
that goes
discussed
out
that.
in the newsletter and gets out there. Here's the ordinances we put in place in
Yep.
2022.
Right.
Because the last annual report that we got was awesome.
It was.
Chris went through, he basically outlined everything that you guys did, and it's like, wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. All right, great.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you.
Dee. Okay. Anything further on Main Street Franklin? We have a agenda item. We okay? Oop.
Hello, I'm Lisa Dunn. I am a resident and business owner, and I also sit on the board of Main Street Franklin. We are very excited to welcome David to the village as our Director of Economic Development. Thank you. I think it's great timing for David to be here. I just recently attended a wonderful event at the Historical Museum. Thank you for that. And so for you being here now, we're planning the 2024 bicentennial next year. So that's very exciting. I'm sure everybody knows about that already. And also, I just wanted to let you know about an additional event that we are planning. I think you have it in the agenda, the civic permits that that are up and coming that we've done in the past. But an additional one that we're working on now is called the Franklin Spring Fling and Fashion Show. And it's going to be held at the Franklin Pavilion with several merchants doing a fashion show. And so we're very excited about that. Again, you'll hear a lot more about this when we get to talk a little bit more. But yeah, so thank you, and I think that's it.
Is that the pavilion behind the grill?
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah, we'll have a runway and,
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah. It's gonna be a lot of fun, but
You
we'll
need
give you more
volunteers?
details. Yes, we do.
Weren't you
We'll sign you up.
Frankenstein once?
What size are you?
Looking for male models.
I'm up for it. I volunteer for everything, so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, we have a consent agenda that contains civic events permits for the summer block party on August 23rd, Frankenstein October 28th, and I can never say this, Sip, Shop, and Stroll December 7th. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda with those three items?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Second, any comments?
Yeah, I have a couple of real quick questions. And I don't know if this is directed to Lisa or not. For the road closures, I know one of them says that for the Franklinstein Frenzy, that would only be closed for 20 minutes. And then the Sip, Shop, and Stroll is not requesting for the road to be closed.
Correct.
Are you sure you don't want to? Because, I mean, honestly, with the 20 minutes, I want to make sure that people are able, you guys throw a wonderful event, and I don't want people to feel like they're being pushed to the side and creating more, because the summer block party is such a wealth of community, right? Of people coming together and being on the road, not worrying about traffic. Franklinstein Frenzy, tons of kids everywhere, not having to worry about your kids running off into the street and all of that. I don't want you all to feel that you can't request for those road closures.
Well, the only one that will not have a road closure is Sip, Shop, and Stroll. The other two will.
Yep.
Yes.
But the Franklinstein Frenzy is only 20 minutes, and I don't want to box you in.
It's usually about 30 minutes.
Okay.
So,
If I may.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate enough to talk with our police chief. It is a little difficult because of the time of the day when we're doing it.
Okay.
It is a very busy time of the day. We don't have alternate road
options.
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yeah, we do,
So we're
yeah,
gonna
we do.
keep it, but I'm actually gonna be working with Lisa.
Oh,
some of the
changes.
other appraisers
We've done this for
today to
years.
look
We can do
at
this.
How we can do that much more efficiently
Okay.
and make it even a safer event.
David?
We've already been talking with the library about moving some of the things that they do over here afterwards with the kids, possibly behind the bank,
Yeah,
and keeping that condensed.
right.
Because we want to keep it as safe as possible, and we want to use our fabulous
Absolutely.
village, Main Street.
Yep.
That we have one of the finest in the area.
Yep.
So David, I appreciate that. I appreciate your thoughts. I certainly had spoken with Chief Roberts many times before about these things. Honestly, and my experience, as part of that, kids go back and forth to the library, to back and forth to the across the street all the time. I honestly think, I think we should have it for much longer, for 2 hours. There's kids everywhere. They go back and forth to Brian's place, to the fire station, to the gas station. So honestly, I think we should allow you like maybe 2 hours for it, then scale it back. But I think we should be allowed to have it, for 2 hours. There's ways around there. There honestly is.
I agree.
I'll sit down with the chief again.
No, David, we've talked about this for 10 plus years about these things. There's always a pushback for it. I have a lot of respect for him, but this is a perfectly reasonable way. Birmingham shuts down their roads, Maple Road, for a day at a time.
Yeah.
So does Plymouth. So,
And we do have good detour routes.
We do.
We learned how to do that during the streetscape where they were closed for weeks. So,
Yeah. I mean, Plymouth and Birmingham shut down their downtown for
Like,
a
I
full
just,
day.
yeah, to me, I'm like, if we have to burden some people for a couple hours every once in a while for the sense of community, I'm all for it.
Yeah, so.
David, you got a sense of what we're talking
Yep.
about, so take it and run with it. Okay.
And I'll go over the plan and I'll
Okay.
make you aware of it.
Thank you.
So,
And the community as well.
Anything else on the
The only
consent
thing I
agenda?
have is the completion, just clarification, because David, I think you may not be aware, there's a banner that goes over Franklin Road for the block party, and there's a little, on the right side of the thing, there's a little box you're supposed to check if it's gonna be required.
On the form.
On the form, and it's not in line, it's to the right, and so it wasn't checked off, and I just know that that's, at least I don't think it is, or maybe that is filled in that little yes. Maybe it is filled in. I didn't see it because it's like little teeny tiny. No, it's right here.
Oh, okay.
No, it is right here. You did fill it in. For
Okay.
whatever reason, it was invisible
She
to me. I'm
withdraws
sorry.
all
I
her comments.
apologize.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Any other comments on the consent agenda? All in favor, aye?
All right.
Okay. Old business, consider a second final reading of chickens and ducks. So this is an ordinance that would allow residents to have chickens and ducks. Who wants to be we've gone through this a couple times. Anybody have any specific questions? Pete? Oh.
Yeah. Just a quick and dirty, what's changed?
Okay, so basically what's changed is two language changes. Covenant was removed, as well as, we had some setbacks in there for the front yard, but we don't allow it in the front yard, so that was corrected. And then the significant one was the pen height. And essentially what we've done,
There's the materials too of the pen.
there is, the largest thing there is what we've done is we made it, and it should be in the new language that you have.
It is. It's basically,
10 square feet, 42 inches high is what I'm seeing.
No, no less
Wasn't
than
it 6
42
feet?
inches, no
Greater.
greater
6
than
feet.
8 feet.
Oh, 8 feet.
They went to 8 feet. That's what they recommended.
Thank you.
And I don't have the most recent.
So it looks like, if you look go to the second one, that's actually got the red at the top, that one shows the changes. Language was added on page 3, under materials.
right, the underlined stuff.
Yeah, the underlined stuff was added in Roman numeral 5, 5.3.
Right, 1, 5, and 3.
Yeah, exactly, Pete's memo, Chris's memo.
It's just basically the materials that the pens, we duplicated the same for the garden
Right.
enclosure, and did the same for the pen height, I think, too, essentially. We didn't want, animals to be popping
So,
in there.
yeah, it was essentially, it was the fence height and the fence materials will be the same language we use in the garden enclosure, which you guys approved
Yep.
a year ago or so.
The other were a couple typographical type things that Chris made.
Right.
Okay,
Any other questions and comments? Do we have a motion to approve
motion to approve
I'll
this.
So
second.
hold on, so we're on.
Yep, and then we can have some more discussion. This is a second reading.
Yeah, motion to approve.
I'll second if you're gonna do it, fine.
Any more discussion? David, you okay yet? Or you,
No, I'm good. So yeah, so we're approving it as presented with the last set of changes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
any other,
Nope, I'm good.
all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, how about the open burn ordinance? I think the controversy here was
Tree canopy.
tree canopy. Do you burn under a tree canopy or do you not? And the planning commission recommends no fires under the canopy.
Tree.
And
So,
There's no-
Peter,
Yes.
I've read through the changes. Section 3711, we talk about nuisance free. We also say about health hazards, so I thought we were striking this ambiguous language, nuisance and health hazard.
Yeah.
So that was stricken.
No, but it still says health hazard, and that's a very ambiguous statement.
I don't love the
Right.
first, I don't love 307.1.1 still either. What you had asked, I think what we had asked was to strike the whole paragraph. And
Just the
then,
last sentence, I
We
thought
let-
we were
Well,
keeping
what-
the last sentence.
well, right, we wanted to keep the last sentence, although I have a question on that last sentence. And then we had said, you're right, get rid of the first sentence of that paragraph.
So,
Entirely. And it looks like they came back and only want to get rid of the nuisance-free section and leaving the other language. My question is,
so,
when wind and weather conditions minimize adverse effects and do not create a health hazard. So we have 307.1.3 where our fire chief is determining and has the ability, when a permit's already been issued, to revoke that permit if atmospheric conditions are deemed by the fire department to be of such a nature as to cause the fire to be potential danger to persons or property within the village. Why can't we add the language up here that also creates a health hazard or visibility hazards on the road and let the fire chief be the arbiter of that? And not a resident who calls and complains and then Roger has to make a determination whether it's a health hazard. If Chief Averbuck, he's gonna have a list. He'll know that day how many permits are out there. If he looks on his list and sees that there's 3 permits that have been issued for that day, and he looks outside and he considers health or atmospheric conditions to be such, then he's gonna call the people that have permits and say, your permit has now been revoked.
so I agree with that, and I think that was just for conversation last week.
Yeah.
So as we go through this, what I'm gonna suggest, same thing we did last time, I'm gonna suggest, striking that first sentence, and actually the second sentence doesn't make any sense anyway. Of course, they have to follow the rules anyway. So I'm gonna recommend we strike 307.1, because the first sentence pertains to what you said.
And
Let the chief
that
make the
language
call.
could be added down into
Well,
1.3. to
Frankly,
give
it's down the
him-
railway. It gives
Yeah.
the fire chief has that responsibility.
Exactly, I agree.
So why be vague and,
Are we gonna add that language to,
no?
or
doesn't-
not?
it
Well,
doesn't
he's saying
have to
yes,
be.
you're saying no.
I'm saying it could be added to give people more of an example of what those atmospheric conditions are, but at the end of the day, it all depends on what Chief Averbuck says.
Yeah.
And if he pulls the plug on it, he
Okay.
pulls the plug on it.
Because he's
And
responsible.
it isn't based upon a resident calling and saying, I think today is too windy to be having permits. That resident shouldn't call Roger. They should call the fire department and say, I know there's a burn permit issued because it's burning on my street right now. Don't you think it's kind of dangerous today? And if he's like, oh, yeah, you know what, you're right, we should probably,
Yeah, so
I agree with keeping that completely in the chief's
I'm
purview.
going to move towards striking 307-1 out
Yep.
and leave it with the police, with the fire chief, frankly.
Yeah, and state fire protection regulations, that should be a given.
Superfluous, right?
So I'm still not, I'm hearing two different things.
No, we're hitting
So
the
we're
same
both
thing.
saying
We're gonna cross it out.
307.11
So we're gonna drop the
is
whole
not legal.
30711.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
Okay.
that's the first change I'm going to suggest, and it looks like we're a lot of nodding heads here.
Okay, what's the second thing?
Second thing, which I've struggled with, 307.3 has changed from the prior version. So now, so first off, 307.3 covers all fires related to this, including bonfires, including campfires, including fire pits and barbecue grills. All fires subject to 307 require a fire extinguisher and a hose and a rake or shovel. So what we're saying is, Franklin gazebo, anything out hat, where's your hose?
Yep.
I don't think that's
I
practical.
thought we talked about that last week.
Let's
and
read this.
I know we did, and
Well, the conversation I recall last week
Where
is
is
that
this?
that's not
It's
banning them,
307.3.
but 307.3 requires them to have a hose. I don't see, if the library doesn't have a hose long enough, and if you have something on the FCA grounds, you don't have the hose out there.
no, that's what I,
It says deemed necessary. I guess it begs the question about who's doing the deeming.
Well, it says,
This is,
it says these things will be here and other things necessary.
Right. The necessary applies to the other things, not to the specifically listed.
So I'm struggling with saying a bonfire, a barbecue, you have to have fire extinguisher there.
We can
a fi-
include, sorry to cut you off, Mark.
So-
One of the things I was gonna say is what we could do is say, all open burning and fires allowed under section 307, something to the effect of other than
307.2.
those included.
Well, but
Let's see.
here's where I struggle, David, and this is why I got in the subject.
No.
Is that we're over legislating here. We're adding all these words on these
I
things,
agree.
right?
Yeah.
Totally.
That's the
And as a good Boy Scout, I've seen the bonfires, I've seen what we do at high schools. These can be healthy bonfires, so I'm struggling with the fact, like, fine, Scouts, make a bonfire. And the bonfires we've done are pretty big. So you would need some of this stuff. So I don't have the answer here why we allow bonfires, and we don't have the solution for these things. So this is not resolved in my mind. How are bonfires and campfires now permitted? Not permitted under this ordinance, but permitted elsewhere?
Sorry, I'm not following that statement.
Well, the first thing we say in 307.21, bonfires and campfires are allowed.
Without a permit.
Yeah. Are there any permits at all required for a church group, for the Scouts, for FCA to have a bonfire?
No,
No.
no.
So that we can have as big bonfires we want with no limits about it at all. There's no limitation of what you want to do on your FCA grounds.
Right.
Then everything else we restrict massively.
But a bonfire is limited. A
it's
bonfire
not.
is relatively contained, whereas a bunch of leaves can be a really long stretch of leaves. It can be very large. A bonfire usually is relatively confined, especially,
Oh my goodness, so,
You raise a good point in how we chose to lump bonfires and campfires, which are huge fires and not necessarily regulated, with the equivalent of a green egg in your backyard and
Yeah.
a 2x2
Oh.
fire pit. So, yeah, maybe bonfires and campfires really should get a permit. If you're gonna do a when was the last time someone in the village did a bonfire that wasn't like a private
No.
event for their home? Like,
But,
if someone came to us for a permit to go on the FCA or on the village
Yeah.
green.
we didn't have to when we had ones on the green, because maybe it's, we say contained.
So maybe that
a
one
certain
should be
something.
permitted.
Maybe we,
well, so.
you're not gonna expect
We're-
every resident to call every single time they're gonna do a backyard camp
Well, this,
bonfire.
well,
I mean, a
So,
little
to your point-
bonfire in a little container.
Well, that's a fire pit.
Yeah, that's a fire pit. We've already
bonfire to me
incorporated
is
that.
like.
a civic event, like the Scouts, we'll make
Yeah,
a
when they
12-foot
have-
tall
like,
bonfire.
bonfire is
Maybe
like
we
a
need
pile.
definitions of what a bonfire
Well,
is
I
then,
think
because
Dave's
otherwise
gonna-
people aren't gonna know
Or you
that.
strike
May I speak here?
7.
One at a time, please. One at a time, here.
That's
So-
in the ordinance currently, 307.2.1, nothing was changed with that. So it says,
Yeah.
bonfires and campfires, which are to be used in conjunction with civic, social, or athletic events are allowed without a permit.
Yeah.
That's currently on the books.
All right, so, but we're now noticing something unique. So I think they should have, like, as part of the permitting process, the fire chief would ask the question, or it'd be certified through the normal civic permit or in some fashion. But Scott, a 12-foot bonfire is no big deal for Boy Scouts
Right,
or athletic groups.
right.
That's not a problem. But we have no control over it. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I think when this was initially written, again, because this is an after-the-fact thing, that it was contemplating bonfire and campfires to essentially be what we're capturing in 307 2.2.
Right.
A
Yeah,
campfire is
what's
burning
the-
A
logs.
fire pit, right.
What's the difference between a bonfire and a recreational fire? And
Or a fire
campfire?
pit, right.
They're fire. Why do we need two different paragraphs?
Do we achieve
we
the
need
objective
definitions?
striking 307.2.1?
Well, so,
You could say, change 30722 to recreational fires and fires for food preparations used in conjunction with civil, social, or athletic events are allowed without a permit. Just take some of the words out of 30721 and put
But
them
I
in
think
22.
you're suggesting you want to have a permit for those.
Well,
a bonfire, so I'm not worried about your fire pit in the backyard at all. I'm not worried about 30722.
correct.
30721, there should be some other kind of permitting in there. There's
Yeah,
no
I mean, that's
control over it at
fine.
all.
We either strike it and it just goes in with everything else, or we go a more prescriptive route and we start to legislate what the bonfire and campfire is.
I would strike 30721.
I'm with you. You would strike which one?
The bonfire and the campfire one.
Yeah,
Just
yes.
strike the whole paragraph?
Yes.
How is that, so the reason is you're not getting control over, you're not getting a permit of it, but you're saying you might think that we should have a
No,
permit.
no, he's saying if we strike it, then bonfires and campfires that don't fit into the category of 307 2.2
Oh.
would then have to get a
Automatically
permit.
can be considered one of
Yes,
these burning
correct.
things. I understand now.
Correct.
That's where I'd lean towards.
I'm with you. I can-
So here's a question then, just that I'm a little unclear about. If part of the reason for this is safety and notifying the fire department, it would seem to me that, how do we let them know about a big bonfire in the village, other than they get to see it?
Because we get approval like we did
get approval, you get a
before,
permit
up here,
for a week.
that,
Oh, because it's through the permitting
It'd be
process?
through the
Yes.
permitting process.
Got it, okay,
so the two
okay.
chiefs go through there, so yes, the police chief, yes, I will do road closure. Fire chief says, yes, that's safe.
Yep.
So if you're gonna have a big social event, you're gonna have a big event at FC grounds, and you're gonna do a bonfire, it would be nice if Chief Tony saw that on the permit application, and I'm gonna have a 6-foot tall bonfire.
But it's not on the permit application at this time.
Well, it's not even asked to be permitted.
That's
It's
my
allowed
point.
to be
Yeah,
old
we
one,
have
it's
that.
We
allowed.
need to have a mechanism to let him
We need
know.
to strike it as a permitted act and then get it out there that it needs to be permitted. And then we need to better define what a
I think we
recreational
need-
fire is.
Right, I think we
So-
need to define what a recreation, because a small campfire, that's a
Yeah, you can
recreational
get cute
fire.
with it, for
No,
sure.
no, for sure. That's the
But if you're
case.
having a civic event, the fire chief's already on here,
Okay,
anyway,
that's fair, I can cross it off.
But isn't the only place you'd have a bonfire on the FCA property?
Or on the
Everything
village
else is-
property.
On the
You
village
could do a
green,
parking lot.
You could have it in the parking
But
lot.
it's private property.
It
You
is
can-
private
yeah,
property.
all of these,
Yeah.
most of this is occurring on private
My
property.
point's about readying the fire department,
Yeah.
and enabling them to be
Yeah,
ready
for sure.
when they know there's gonna be a big fire, huh?
And aware.
And aware, that's right. That's-
imagine the
yeah.
fire department, one of the volunteers drove through the road, saw a 6-foot bonfire over here, and no one knew anything about it.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm just having a hard time visualizing where you'd have a bonfire other than the FCA property.
Well,
And-
you could have it
and
in
I
somebody's
could have one-
backyard, you could have it
I
in
could have
somebody's
one-
backyard.
But if I have one in my
4 acres,
backyard,
It would
that's
still
a big
count.
bonfire. I'm gonna call that a,
Well,
We could put one in the bottom of Pam's backyard. I got a huge area
but
there.
Pam has to have a permit
Yeah.
though for that?
we go to the museum, do one there. I mean, there's all sorts of places. I
You
mean,
do.
it's-
There's
One way to
a
deal with
fine,
the fact-
that's what we're talking
That's
about.
what
There's
I'm
a
saying.
fine
Fine.
line between a recreational
Right.
fire and a
Right.
fire pit fire
That's right.
and a bonfire.
Right.
I think we need to define that, folks.
I think
I'm
you
having-
define
No, we're
what
all
a
saying the same
recreational
thing.
fire- Yep.
The recommendation would strike 307.2.1
Yep.
and then define recreational fires.
Get this out of the leaf burning ordinance,
So we,
put it in the event ordinance, right? And sign off by civic event, because that's what we're saying. Civic, social, or athletic events. You already have a process for that.
Well, we aren't talking about burning, so I mean, this is the fire ordinance, but
Yeah, we need
all it
to-
needs to do is it needs to come out of where, like you just identified it as a permissible event, an unpermitted, permissible event. And we don't want it to be unpermitted and just unilaterally permissible. But we need to define the difference between what a recreational fire in your backyard
Yeah.
with 6 or 7 friends over is different between that and a bonfire. What, like, that's the fine line.
Yeah.
What- Is it size, circumference, height? What, how do you draw the line between 12 people hanging out in their backyard and 12 people doing it on?
Exactly.
So, all right, let's pause here. What I would recommend I'm willing to come back next month if Peter and the planning commission want to look at 30721 and 30722.
Pete, do you have any insight on this one? or-
It's challenging. I mean, I think there is some value in identifying different types of fires so that people can't claim, well, this is a French baguette fire that we do special, right? But,
Robust German one, yeah.
right, but, you know,
Which
I've heard your comments. We can make a darn effort
Okay.
to
Size
try
and
and
magnitude, it's
summarize.
gonna have to come down to size and magnitude.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's like, right, there's a lot of different names for different kinds of fires. So what's in the fire, the size of the fire,
So
we'll
let's
give
just
it
roll
a.
this over till
Okay.
next time and ask my commission to give us some
Yeah, I
ideas
mean, a
on.
bonfire is
My
burning
request-
leaves. You're not burning leaves in a burn fire. We're not trying to create,
Right.
you know what I mean? We're not trying to get rid of things as opposed to the purpose of this ordinance, which is to get rid of materials that we would otherwise have to get rid of in a landfill
Right,
versus what someone can safely do on their property, and that's where we have to kind of juxtapose between
So
what's a bonfire and what's just a get-together.
2 requests, Peter. First request on 30721 and 30722. Look at how you define what those fires are and how they would be permitted, I guess, then. That's the first request.
all right.
Second request is, in 3073, you refer back to all those fires, and I don't see how we're gonna have an FCA event here requiring a fire hose, a fire extinguisher, all those other things in the middle of the grounds. You're referring back to it, but I don't think that's practical. So how would they manage that?
Well, when we had the camp, just a simple campfire in a fire pit, I called the fire chief and I asked him what he would like. He said, if you have some buckets of water, you might not be able to have a hose, just have some buckets of water prepared and maybe have a fire extinguisher. So that's what we did.
That's fine, but that's
So let's
not found in the
change-
law.
Let's change the
still.
law then.
So
Fire hose if practical or something like that.
If you read this language, Mark's right.
Right.
A fire extinguisher, a garden hose, a metal rake, a
Well,
shovel,
there is-
and shall be available.
It's the word "or," right? You could
That's
have
not word, there's no
either
R, there's
extinguisher
no or in there.
No, he's saying it should be.
Or a hose,
There should-
right? So one
But
of
it
those
doesn't say
does
that.
Good, but it can say bucket of water too, so we can look into doing that.
But it doesn't say that,
It says
Peter.
fire
Oh,
extinguisher
you're right.
or
It does say
garden
or.
hose.
It does
Yeah.
say or shovel.
Where's or?
So
Oh, or shovel.
personally, honestly, yeah, anyways, the
But
way that,
I hear what you're saying. We can
So-
work on that.
So, everything else, we're gonna strike 30711, take that out. 30721 and 30722, you're gonna work on defining what those things are. And the third
What was
thing,
your first 3071?
30711 is gonna be taken out.
Right, right.
30721, 30722, you're gonna work on the size and defining what a bonfire is.
and Pete, just for the clarity on that language, if you removed "or" before shovel and then just switched out "and" for or any other fire extinguishing equipment deemed necessary, I don't even know if you want to do the any other fire extinguishing equipment deemed necessary.
Yeah.
Because who's doing that?
The who's doing the deeming. is,
Right.
Right.
Oh,
And the items you've got cover help,
Yeah.
will definitely help put out a fire if you have one or more of those things there.
Yeah, yeah. We're happy
and actually,
to,
if I recall, the prior language said a functioning hose.
Stop.
Peter, you clear and what?
There's a hose there, it's not connected to anything.
Be an empty hose?
Well, my recollection is that it's a functioning hose, yeah, and demonstrate that actually water comes out of it.
Okay, let's,
So if
let's
you can do
move on,
those three
okay?
things, then we'll talk about it in,
Okay.
at length next
Yeah,
time.
before we let this one go though, the most controversial thing in it, we haven't even talked about.
No,
yet,
we're not
which
talking
was-
about
We're not gonna talk
No,
about the
we're not
canopy?
gonna talk about it.
What?
No, we're not talking about it. Look at those three things, that's enough, we're done.
Whoa, what do you mean?
Well, then I would
Everybody's
assume that your
interested.
recommendation was for it to remain stricken?
I'll leave the language as written now.
Are you talking about the tree canopy?
Yeah, leave the,
And you're okay with the way how they fix combustible?
no. I'm not, I'm not.
They were,
That
they
was-
were very pretty adamant that they wanted something that can burn. What is the problem with it?
Well, everybody's entire lawn is full of, so, thank you, David.
Yeah.
Is full of things that catch fire and burn easily. Why are we having this? That's the same conversation. You just made 5 words or 6 words match 1 word. Any material, so, that, I thought we struck
I
that.
guess the feeling was that it does add value to.
But we gave you
anything.
direction to take it out.
Except that there was a discussion and they were adamant that they felt very strongly, like, why should it be removed? Something combustible, something that can burn easily, why
So
would we
we-
put it next to a gasoline
Right.
tank?
Well-
Why would we put
Any,
it next to?
but everybody's backyard is full of branches. No one has a backyard, there's not a leaf. So this is insanely overreaching.
I think you don't know who builds fires. I think you need to have very easy language.
I think that was,
Hang on, but-
that was the argument, is that you have to like
Can we just
lay
do
it
an
out.
80-20 real quick? Like, let's solve for the 80? Because if it's a gas can, I'm never getting, nothing's ever gonna happen to me. Nobody is watching my fire occur, right? We fill out they fill out a permit and then they let it happen. So, to me, these should be permanent structures, right? Or something of permanence. And so what are we intending the materials that are able to catch fire to be easily? Because if it's portable, there's no way for us to deem whether or not that's actually occurring, right? Somebody can leave the gas can
Every
there.
person on this council knows somebody that's used gasoline to start a bonfire.
That's already illegal on here.
Well, I'm just saying, this fits in
But
the
it could be
same
next to it, it could be within, it could be close to
But
it.
nobody's
But
regulating.
you don't say that, you say any material that can catch fire.
Here's my thought.
So let me just tell you, I think how this even came up was, I'm not sure if that's how it came up, but the other day, like that big house on 13 Mile Road, they had a big can and they were burning all this stuff, and there was like a propane tank that was just not that far away from it. And I'm like, you guys, this doesn't make any sense. This fire should not be here. You've got this here.
Is that,
So that was like, that made.
is a propane tank a structure?
Well, that was. It was
Okay, so it's
big.
already covered. But you gotta hear, any
Well, it's
material
not-
combustible.
It's not a permanent structure, I mean,
A propane, so
I don't know.
you're covering this massive thing. There's not anybody's backyard that doesn't have 25 of anything combustible within 25 feet.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not in disagreement with you. I understand. I was just giving you context.
I just don't, my thing is, I don't know how we do enforceability on things that aren't
So,
permanent.
let's use some historical context. We have been a village for
Almost
coming up
200
on
years.
200 years. Does anyone recall from a open burning of leaves where a tree caught on fire or someone was stupid enough to leave a gas tank next to it? I mean,
So this is-
we're talking about some common sense context
Over
here.
legislating this.
That's my point, which is how has it ever been a problem where a fire has caught the tree above it on fire?
So let me tell you, because I'm on the fire commission, so I brought this up to the,
I'm
to
curious, yeah.
the chief and to all the guys that were there. I said, do you have any issue? I said, there was this discussion about not having a tree canopy. They're like, we've never seen a tree catch on fire. We have no issue with the trees. We're not worried about a living tree catching on fire at all. I'm like, even 25 feet, 50 feet, like, is there any, and they're like, we don't have anything to say
No,
about
because there's so much
that.
water and trees not gonna catch fire.
Right.
So this whole process is we never asked you to look at this in the first place. The reason we're talking about this is because we have constant complaints from a couple of places in the historic district about the smoke. I mean, I've always
We've
think this.
addressed that. This ordinance addresses
Yeah,
that. Without
but
having
this
to go,
whole
like,
rewrite, you
above
just
and beyond
massive rewrite
creating the
just for
problem.
that.
David, you know as well as I do
I
that,
listened to your discussions.
that there's-
Pete has
well-
not been supporting this. Pete's been the opposite of this.
but also, you keep saying that it was just someone who talked down here. Well, it isn't. It's from living here all my life, right? And 12 years on a planning commission and knowing that this comes up. So again, I didn't put it on the agenda, but when I saw it there, I didn't say get that off of there. I said, you know what, let's go ahead, try to address it. Really see how people feel about it. Do they really, is that a big group of people? Is it a small group of people that have issues with burning? So
So I guess we're not gonna take any formal action on this, because
Well, no, 'cause
we
we're at
need
the
to look
second
at the
reading stage, so
definitions,
we can't.
right?
Yeah.
And Pete, I guess you've heard our
yeah.
conversation.
All right.
And if
Fair.
planning has any,
Better. I'm gonna
Yeah.
try and get you a memo to you. I'll take it on. I'll take, because I've been taking notes.
okay,
I'll get a memo to you and Chris, so that you can go into your next meeting
Great.
not as unprepared as you went into it last meeting, when you were kind of guessing at what we had discussed. I frankly didn't realize you
Yeah.
were gonna be talking about it that soon.
Right. After I rewatched the council meeting, I realized there are a
And now
couple
that I
things there.
rewatched the
But
planning
I
meeting, I see
obviously,
where you guys got caught up on
trying to
some of
move it
the things.
along, and get the process,
okay.
get the red tape
Cool.
up, but we need it to
Well,
be right.
See what you can do, and let's put it again next month.
Okay.
Okay, Roger?
Could we have formal direction from the council to refer this back to the planning commission?
Yeah, I'm gonna write a memo back.
But we still need an action by the council to
So
refer it back.
do we need a motion then to refer this back to planning to consider the issues that we've raised?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
On favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next one is horses and equines. We've got a change in the ordinance which would allow 1 horse per acre. Do we have a motion to approve this in the first reading?
I move. I
And I'll
second.
second.
Okay, between Kathy and Mark,
And
first
then-
and second. Any discussion here?
There was one discussion we had at the meeting, and it was something about this, how we love having the horses in the front yard, and that there's several houses that have, the area for the horses to go in the front yard. And we said that we were gonna add in, that was okay. And I somehow see only the fence is constructed after a minimum setback of 10 feet. Maybe just the leaving the front out was avoiding talking about a setback. It was, I think, in C. It says the fence is constructed after enactment of this section shall be a setback of minimum 10 feet from the side and rear. Maybe it was that we had a front setback and we removed it. I don't remember. But I remember that being an important discussion because it really is nice to have the fencing for the horses in the front yard, which is different than most of our other fencing that we always have in
Should
the
we
side or the
hold
back.
off on this and clarify that for next month?
It just,
Well, this is first reading.
this is
Yeah.
first reading.
Okay.
Yeah, it actually just refers to a setback, a minimum of 10 feet from the property line. So there isn't a
It says the
distinction.
side
Side and
and
rear.
rear. It doesn't say front.
So what section are you looking at?
C.
See.
6/12/22
What we need
C.
to cross-reference it to is the fence ordinance, and see if in the fence ordinance, we have an exception to fences in the front yard that allows it for horses.
good point.
Because I think it might be in there.
All right, well, I don't see any reference to front yard.
There isn't a front yard setback, and at first I was thinking that we
We need to check the horse
should have
ordinance.
something stated
Well,
about
says
it
the
that
prop-
it is allowed
says
in the
the
front
property
yard.
line.
It says the side and the rear property lines, which,
Reading the old ordinance, or the current ordinance.
I just wonder if we should have a statement that
So
says,
you're looking at the current ordinance, you
I
think?
believe we are.
All right.
yeah.
Proposed ordinance. Section C states,
Yeah, you-
fences constructed after enactment of this section shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the side and rear property lines. The current one that's on the books does not include that rear and set
All right.
side.
All right.
It just says fences constructed after enactment of this act shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet from the property line.
Ah. So that may be why we did that, why we chose side and rear as the wording for that. specifically.
Did that mean you were trying to pull it out of the front yard? 'Cause
No, we were
people-
trying to allow it to be in the
Oh,
front
to be in the
yard.
front yard, okay, good.
Yeah, we wanted to allow it to be in the front yard, but I almost think we just need a statement that says,
To me, this says just the opposite.
Yeah, I'm with
what I
you.
think.
My reading is
Yeah.
that it actually was intended to pull it out of the front yard.
how I
no,
read
we
it.
wanted to have it in the front yard,
So
but
it's-
that's why we need a statement.
So
something.
strike the word side and rear on that paragraph C.
Just keep it property lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
David made a good point that it should be cross-referenced with other fencing as well.
Yeah, the fence ordinance might already allow it in the front yard. That might be an exception to front yard fencing, might be for horses.
So the clean
Because it's pretty hard to get your 1
Is
acre
the,
coverage
full-
and not include your front yard.
I'm reading it from the website right
So,
Yeah,
but both proposed ordinances says rear and side setback.
All right, we can get clarification on it.
but yeah, what the fence ordinance say?
so we have just this issue of, I guess, striking the word side and rear.
Yep, so we've got that to
And then we
identify
need to
and
check the
cross-reference.
the fence ordinance on,
Yep.
okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve this in the first ordinance. Do we want to amend
Real
that
quick question,
in the first
sorry.
reading?
We can just approve the first
Is-
reading and then finalize the.
Is 4 feet high enough as a minimum?
So we did, I believe that is also changed to 6 feet.
Because I defer to any subject matter expert, but 4 feet doesn't seem too high.
No,
Can a hor-
it is 6 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, horse can.
So,
We talked
yeah,
about it.
Right, it says a minimum of 4 feet, which shall not exceed 6 feet.
Right,
right.
that sounds right.
I mean, the horse can probably jump a 6 foot anyways, I mean, depending on the horse, but they're running.
4 feet they can clear. 6 feet's
Not so
pretty,
much.
6 feet's getting up there.
So are you suggesting a change, or you?
Yeah, again, I don't know what to put the feet at, but
Go back
4
and
feet
discuss.
seems really low, so I'd take that back.
But I think there are
That's
fences
what,
in town that are 4 feet.
yeah.
So I don't want to have them
Gotta
Make it
find-
change all their fences.
And I get
Right.
that we're,
If they're
like,
happy with it.
miniature horses could be kept at 4 feet, that's fine, but if somebody's, whatever.
But people are gonna do what they need to do.
We'll hire the
right?
cowboys
We
when
don't
they
need
get
to
out.
be- We don't need to be,
My mule won't.
They
be
have the
able to-
option of putting in a
Get a mule.
higher
yeah,
fence
let
if
them
they
do
need.
what they
That's
want
what
to
it-
do.
Google search says 8 feet to protect, keep a horse in?
Well, it says a horse can jump 8.
Oh.
Oh, look at that.
Right, which I'm,
So we want 10 feet then?
But
Well-
remember that our intention with
Right.
this was just tweak the ordinance
Right.
and let horses live
Light
in
touch.
Franklin.
Let people do what they
So
want to do
the
if they own
less
a
change, the
horse.
better for
They
it.
can take
Horses
care
are
of-
If
expensive,
you
people
find
don't
your
wanna
horse
lose
is
them.
clearing your
Got
4-foot
it.
fence, time to get a 6-footer.
Right.
Okay,
I'm getting a mule. I'm getting a mule.
I mean, we expanded it to 6 feet. I think it was 4 feet
I
originally.
think 4 to 6 is fine.
Yeah.
And again, if you
Yeah.
have a
I think
valuable
that's
horse and you
like
want to,
standard operating procedure for
yeah, you can always come and
corrals.
get a variance.
Cowboy business.
Yep.
Catch 'em.
Light
Okay,
touch.
are we done with
I hope so.
discussion here?
I hope so.
So all in favor of approving the horse ordinance in the first reading, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Here we go. Okay, next item is the outdoor lighting ordinance. This is just a discussion item. There are, we got an original proposal from McKenna back in August and a revised one in October. The issue, I have one main issue, and that's, I was thinking that what we really need to do is address the amount of light coming from a fixture. So rather than prohibit any traditional type fixtures, just reduce the amount of light in them. And I don't think this does that. This is a real dark sky type ordinance, which is beyond what I had envisioned.
So is that in reference to ornamental lighting?
Yeah, or
That's,
any light, a post light on my front, or a light on the side of my house, or my door.
Those are ornamental lights. The
so
ones
in
that-
general, it should be shielded on top, and directed mostly down.
But I think that changes the requirements for, say, the lights in the historic district, where they have a fixture that is a replica of a 100-year-old
So
fixture.
that is exempt, but
It
right,
says it's exempt, but when you look at these pictures, the graphic, you see these pictures right here.
Well,
These are your historic lighting.
yeah,
And
I
it
mean-
says in the words, if you put the glasses on, it says that fully shield ornamental fixtures, and it says something about they need to be fully shielded.
well,
And
I
so-
mean, I think that's an example of a fully shielded
I-
historic, but we
But it
exempt,
says,
we,
it complies, is following our few examples of light fixtures that comply with the ordinance requirements. My question is, why would something that's ornamental even be included if ornamental is excluded from the requirements? And these are clearly ornamental looking light fixtures.
I mean, it's helpful to help distinguish, even though these are shielded historical fixtures, or not historical, ornamental fixtures, it does give you some information. It helped me when I was trying to look. But so they are exempt in terms of shielding. And the basic idea is, we understand that ornamental, decorative, historic fixtures may not have these, dark sky type of canopies, and for aesthetic purposes, but they still need to live up to the light limits.
The light trespass.
Right. And you can always just
That
lower
makes sense.
put a smaller bulb in.
That's the key, is the amount of light that fixture puts out.
Right,
Again, we're not trying to do a dark sky thing. We're
Right.
just trying to be good neighbors.
right.
Right.
So that is how it's worded right now.
Well, real quick though, there's a lot of requirements outside of that, and again, it goes back to what our intent was what is the light at the property line, right? And that's covered by the foot candles, and so are we, again, applying an 80-20 rule to not over-legislate people, which is, if we just set it at, here is the foot candle permission, what's permitted for the foot candles at the property line, what are the remaining issues, and are they actually a problem for the
The
community?
only one to me would be direct glare, and outside of those two issues, I'm not sure.
And even with direct glare, how much glare are we really getting if at the property line, it's 0.2 foot
Not
candles?
really, you're not really.
Right.
That may address the issue. I still want to get the meter, with the meter we bought is, I want to go out and measure some myself.
I bought one and went out and started measuring it, and to me, the 0.2 foot candles was reasonable. There were some that I didn't think would pass 0.2 that did. But still felt that it was, like, if our intent is really concerning around the property, the light extending past the property, then I think that's what should be the focus.
Right. I mean, I think it's clearly the most important
Yeah.
part of the ordinance. We looked at a lot of different ordinances and
Right.
tried to come up with a fairly thorough, helpful one. Yeah, Pam.
I didn't spend as much time on the details of the lighting ordinance as I did on the purpose, because I think that that's where we need to get to agreement before we start talking nuance and application of lighting. I liked what you did on purpose, 147002. The one thing I would throw on the table for discussion is the village center. There's a big difference between lighting somebody's yard and light trespass and annoying your neighbors and the issues we all have to, or lighting your yard, which isn't, that you're talking about, Bill. But I think down in the downtown area, I'd like to encourage us to add a purpose statement about the commercial district. Because I think some of these don't necessarily apply.
What would that say?
Or we might want a goal about lighting the
Well, lighting downtown is desired, actually. It's
lighting
the opposite.
downtown is desired, and if you think about it, when we started designing the streetscape and the end product, we said we're gonna have pole lights, and we said we like dark sky, so we're gonna do those shepherd hook things, low lighting, but it had to cover the street, so that's what we did there. Then we said we don't want people tripping on our sidewalks, so we said, let's put some small bollards down at strategic places, so we did that. The third element that we haven't ever talked about, and maybe this is when we should do it, is how the buildings complement the big picture and lighting in the commercial district. Because how someone lights her or his building adds to the
Ambiance.
overall ambiance
The
of
amount of
lighting.
light also,
And we
right.
are treating this as residential lighting. I would like a direct reference to downtown lighting.
Well, we do talk about non-residential lighting in the section.
Yeah.
There's in
There's a whole
sign
section.
lighting, we
Yeah.
talk, but we
Yeah.
specifically do talk about it.
Yeah, I just sort of saw the downtown and village center as a bigger issue than non-residential. Because, so, again, I don't need to work the issue tonight,
Okay.
but I think we need to have something in this about the importance of lighting in the business district. And how it,
Encouraging good lighting,
encouraging good
best
lighting.
practices.
Encouraging
Yeah.
business owners to think about lighting. And,
The only thing that I will say is just remember that, I mean, this is an ordinance, so it's inherently going to be to regulate, right? So if we're trying to do the promotion of lighting in downtown, I would be hesitant to incorporate it into here out of the adverse and unintended effects.
well, and I appreciate that. One of the first things our lighting consultant said was, he pointed out two or three or four buildings and said, there's a great example of classic light pollution.
Right.
And it was blah, up in the eye and overly lit. We want some consistency in the level of lighting downtown. We want to draw people to buildings. We want to make it safe to get to buildings. So I don't think I agree with you on your point. I think there are different issues with commercial.
I'm just saying I would focus on how you want to restrict the lighting, because ultimately that's how it's going to read.
You don't want it greater than, we want to avoid
You know, and uplighting has to be directed
the light pollution.
specifically
Yeah.
onto the property
Yeah.
to address those type of things. But again, from here, I believe what the intent was is light crossing the property line, and now has turned into something far more restrictive than that. That includes things like uniformity of lighting, light pollution, all of these things that are not actually, I mean, it's in addition to speaking to the reason why this was initially took on.
And it does say permit the use of outdoor lighting needed for nighttime safety, utility, security, productivity, enjoyment, and commerce.
What words would you add to this purpose, Pam? I'm having a problem with it.
Here's what I'll do. I can't answer you right this
Okay.
second, but
Gin up something.
I've spent enough time with Robert White, who wrote the
Gotcha.
manual
Yeah.
and that you guys used as a model for this.
Yep.
And I will come back with something, or
Great.
I'll send it to you,
Okay,
because
okay.
I feel really strongly about this, that it's part of the whole picture of how we want our village center to look.
Cool.
And it's a different set of issues than residential lighting. Overlapping, but different.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better mark that down, Dana.
We're just discussing here, just a couple other things wrote down. We use the word adjoining several times. I don't like that word. I think it's subject to interpretation here. We need near or something like that instead of adjoining.
Because it could be across the street.
147005A is
I
one
agree.
place where we use it. I think I saw it a second time. Uniformity ratio, I have no clue what a 4-to-1 is. Does anybody understand that?
It's complicated.
Pardon?
It is, it's complicated, but it does.
But it's definable, eh?
Yes, and it does.
Okay, that's all I need to
Provide a
know.
standard, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then public monuments, do we have any public monuments?
Not yet, you want one for you?
You're gonna put my statue up and not light it,
Yeah.
you know? Do we need that? I don't know. Flag lighting bothers me a little bit. I get it, you wanna light a flag, but you can tilt that light just a little bit more into your neighbor's bedroom window.
I
How
think
do we
we're required.
avoid that? I'm sorry?
I think US flag code requires them to be lit.
I agree,
Yeah.
but how do we, how do we light the flag, not the house next to the
Well,
flag?
there must be some language around
Yeah.
It says
Right.
15 to 25 degrees and focus directly on the flag. Yeah, at least that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Flashing lights, I guess we can't have any more flashing Christmas lights. Is that what we're saying?
No, I think we allowed that.
No, because they carved out temporary low illuminant seasonal lighting.
Right,
Okay.
that's because it's being exempt.
Neon?
Yeah, we do allow that.
There is an exception there somewhere?
Yes, we allow temporary low noon
Right here.
seasonal lighting
Oh, okay.
is
Okay.
It's
excluded.
page 5,
Okay.
exempt from regulations regarding fixture orientation, shielding, mounting height, and color correction. It doesn't say it is exempt from movement.
Flashing and moving lights.
It doesn't, we
Right.
talked about it a couple times, but
What the-
So,
the
okay,
temporary low
Yeah.
luminance
It came up.
seasonal
you're right.
lighting.
I mean, the feeling of the commission was
Right.
that,
We can
um,
discuss it.
I'm okay with that, I
It
just,
says nothing in the
Well,
subsection is
clarify
intended to
that,
prohibit motion activated lights or lights otherwise exempted.
Right, but motion activated is different than a
Yeah.
twinkling,
But right, it says,
they're,
the exempted thing is 1470.07G, which is Christmas lights. So Christmas lights are exempted from, now maybe using the
doesn't
word
say
exempted.
movement, though. It says they're, or it exempt from regarding orientation, shielding, mounting height, and color correction. It doesn't say movement. We discussed it, and I think that the planning commission decided
Yes.
that we just weren't gonna have flashing lights, and that's okay, or moving lights.
That's fine.
Which
Okay.
I'm okay with too, but we have to decide.
let's just make sure we make an informed decision, so. Why do we exempt public right-of-way lighting? Why isn't that subject to everything else?
Yeah, I mean,
I
we
know.
couldn't we just solve for that with, like, a public lights, right?
I-
Anything owned by the village or set up by the village?
Well, the way it's worded in here, I think is perfectly correct. You know, lights erected by, in public
But it-
right of way
but
by a
this-
public committee.
But this
Is that-
paragraph
that covers-
says, public right-of-way lighting is not governed by this ordinance.
I think it's perfect.
Well, I think is it true? Is it
But
true
do
that
you
we're
want,
not?
10-foot candles on I don't know, what double the amount of light coming out of our right-of-way lights that you would allow anywhere else?
The lights that go up around here are going up by us.
Exactly. So
So-
why don't we comply with the ordinance? Why do we have to have an exemption?
We are complying with the ordinance.
Can you give me an example of what lighting in a public right-of-way would look like?
All the lights we put down the
Yeah.
street,
Yeah,
all the lights on the
It would be
sidewalk.
ones that are owned by us.
yeah, it's great lighting, but somebody comes along and said, it's not bright enough, let's triple the amount of light coming out of there.
That's a good point.
And that changes the whole,
But that's us.
That's us.
Yeah,
We would
so-
But
have
it
to
might be
approve that.
somebody else that comes after us.
well, then, in their wisdom, they got elected, so they
Then
decided to
should
do
happen.
it.
That's the role of council.
okay.
But, I don't know.
I mean, normally, we don't set rules to restrict future councils.
Do we have anything that shows what our
about the balance?
current ordinance is in relation to this?
I don't think we have.
very simple one pager. I don't.
I'd really love to see our simple one pager, to see what we're operating under now, and see
So,
what we're
I mean-
trying to,
So
what
we're-
we're trying to create based upon, from my understanding, one problem.
So I will say that we did not, in general, we did not prohibit anything that isn't already in there, but we defined it better.
Well,
You know, right now it has
that's
to do
not
with
true.
casting a shadow. And
That-
and I may be wrong, but in general, that,
But if it's one page,
I
this
think
is,
that
so
it
much
certainly
bigger.
wasn't our intention to create extra prohibition, but it was to define what these vague, you know,
That's my concern, is we have this maybe unintended consequences
Yeah,
here.
totally.
correct.
But the fewer words, the better.
Why would I
Brightness
say, what
is
does our
the issue.
current ordinance say about lights?
Well,
Oh,
you
you'll
gotta
love it.
Get
Great.
your,
I will, no, I.
look at
I
the,
will look.
yeah, yeah, okay. I think we've discussed this, we got an idea where we're going, we'll talk about it again next month. And Pete, if the planning commission has
I would
input,
suggest you do nothing until at a minimum you get Pan's memo and some better direction from us, because you're gonna just be wasting time.
Spinning your tires.
okay.
So I think that's a good resolution. Don't act until we act you to act.
We owe you some stuff.
And let's do this right rather than fast.
You'll have mine within a week and a half, as soon as I can give it a little time.
All right.
Okay, let's move on to the
The 9:30 mark.
zoning map. We have a resolution here that, I'm sorry?
Could I get clarification on what the direction of council is with respect to the lighting ordinance?
We are going to get a couple positions clarified, get that information to Pete. And then we're gonna talk about this again
Planning
next
is to
month.
do
So
nothing
there really
until
isn't, yeah,
further direction from us.
right. There really isn't, put it on the agenda for
Anne's
next
gonna
month.
work on a memo for some language that she has concerns about.
So
I'm gonna
could we say, for the record, that you're putting this matter aside until the next council meeting?
Yes, you can say that,
Good.
Okay,
okay? Okay.
just want to make sure
Action
that,
item, yes. That would be good.
No action by the
No action
administrator
taken.
required.
further consideration at the next meeting.
Right.
Right, I guess for the purposes, maybe, something indicating that it's a live issue. We do respect that the planning commission spent a bunch of time on it.
No,
Just
they're
so
not
my
going to say
folks-
that.
Right, thanks, Pete, but no thanks. Just so the planning commission understands, because we do hear that
Yes.
sometimes. It's like, oh, they're not, they didn't care, and I don't
No,
think
no,
that's
no,
the
that's
case.
absolutely not the
Obviously, you
case.
didn't. So
Peter-
I'm just suggesting that maybe,
We're-
there's items that are being acted upon to be reviewed at next
Yes.
council meeting. Right now, we don't need to do anything.
Peter?
So I
Peter?
suggest language in the minutes that says Peter clarified that the council was complimenting the planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between not agreeing and not respecting what the planning commission does and not appreciating what it does and not needing what you do.
Yeah.
It still doesn't mean that our end result always has to be what came out of planning.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I don't think anyone feels that way.
So
No.
the one feedback I would personally give to you and the planning commission, legislate small changes. I think we're really going overboard on some of these things. I mean, this is past what we had ever envisioned. And take a light approach, not a big approach. That's my opinion.
Well, yeah, I hear you. I mean, obviously, when Mike White, your guy, came in?
Robert White.
Robert White, sorry. It's like we went to school on it. He showed us, here's what these really good ordinances are all about.
But ask us for advice. That's not what we're looking for. We're trying to be clear with you. We don't want that.
This isn't
Legislate
Sedona,
lightly.
this is Franklin, yep.
That's not what we're looking for.
But what, to be fair to Robert, what he gave the planning commission was a book about this thick, and the planning commission gave us 4 or 5 pages. I mean, that's dramatic.
That's a pretty good bit, yeah.
They did a good job
Right.
Nobody's
on this.
criticizing planning.
I know that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone knows.
No.
The bigger question is, after having gone through this exercise, their hard work is going to allow us to determine whether or not we need to go to this extent.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
I didn't realize the scope of it until I actually sat down with
Even
you.
until I just read it.
You know?
David had done that first pass, we had kind of, so this was really my first
I'm really glad
reading
we
of
could do this,
is an
yeah.
This is an intense ordinance.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Good job, Pete, thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is the public institutional zoning. We've created a new zoning category, public institutional, and we have a resolution that directs the planning commission. It starts the process of rezoning 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 different pieces of property like the village office, the library, the FCA property, the sledding hill, the church, Huda School, the post office. That's not everything, but that's most of them. So we have a resolution that directs the planning commission to begin the process of rezoning these properties to PI public institution. Do I have a motion to approve this resolution?
That's not what this is just a request.
We're just requesting to send it to.
It's not a proposal.
Sending it
Yes.
to sending it to the PC.
We're
to the
sending
planning
it to the planning commission, which is the process.
I make a motion to refer this to the planning, to adopt this resolution and refer it to the planning commission.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I have comment.
Okay, discussion.
Yeah. So I'm fine, I read this. I definitely have been one of the people who's been championing this. I would add one word, because without this word, frankly, I'm not sure what we're asking them to do. But we're asking, because our word right now is the process is to ask planning to be the first eyes on things, is what we always ask them to do, and to do the heavy lifting of the vetting, which they'll also do. But I think in that last now therefore, it's for those eligible and appropriate properties. If we just ask them to recommend changing the eligible properties, then why are we doing it? Everything's eligible, we would just do a blanket rezoning of them all. Part of what we're determining is which of these properties should be rezoned.
Okay. So,
So the word, I think, eligible and appropriate is what we're asking them to really do.
so you make a motion to approve, to amend it to include and appropriate. Is there a
Add the
second?
word and appropriate after the word eligible in the now
Okay.
therefore section. And I'd like them to give the first recommendation of the, what did you say it was, Bill? 11 or so properties?
Yes.
Yep. I'm curious what their first blush is, because if we didn't have that word in there, we'd basically be telling them to just make all the eligible properties.
Gotcha.
Good point. And why go, why?
Why would we do it? We just do a
And maybe-
blanket, we rezone all the properties to PI.
Maybe we forgot something, you never know.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, exactly. And you know, we've discussed some of the properties that might not.
So David is,
So are these including the following, but not, there could be other ones?
Yes.
that we
Yeah,
think about?
These are the only properties that are currently master planned and our future land use map as public, quasi-public.
So there can be no further ones? This is
Well,
all that's allowed?
Well, we
by
could come
law?
up with more
That's
if
what
we
I'm just
wanted
wondering,
to,
if there
but
was something else that the planning commission came up with.
It does. It says any other eligible properties. There may be more that aren't on
Yeah.
these 11.
any other.
Okay.
So David's proposed an amendment.
We're
Do
good.
we have a second to
Second.
David?
No, but
Okay.
he said, but see, this is a little different than you're saying. To examine the properties listed above and any other eligible and appropriate properties.
no, I don't want I want eligible in the second eligible. I'm sorry, I didn't realize eligible was twice. Eligible after the second, in the last phrase.
Oh,
For
the
those
last
eligible,
phrase.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize eligible was twice. That's
Okay.
my bad.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes, other eligible
meant the
properties
last
for
paragraph.
sure. Yes.
the last sentence.
If we were asking them to change the zoning map for all eligible properties, then what would be the discussion?
Right.
All eligible properties would just be
Right.
rezoned.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so we're
That
asking to do
makes
two
more
things. Determine if there are other properties
Mm-hmm.
that should get onto the future land use map, and of the ones that are on there, which ones are appropriate.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve this resolution with the amendment of adding and appropriate after the last eligible, between eligible properties. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next one, we have a,
Arbor Day.
Just the budget.
budget amendments. So we have, I think I just put the whole thing away.
That's what we just did.
Yeah.
We discussed this in our workshop, so do we have a motion to approve the proposed budget amendments, which would
As long as I get it, I don't care, because it's not gonna change anything.
increase our total revenue for the first half of the fiscal year, I'm sorry, increase our total costs by $40,000, split between about 6 or 7 different accounts. So do we have a motion to approve this proposed budget amendments?
And can we just get clarity, since we're now officially on the record, that this is regarding payments for the first these are for funds already spent?
Yes,
For the
Right.
first 6 months of this fiscal year.
Correct.
which covers July 1st of last year to December 31st of 2022.
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve this, the budget amendments? Nobody wants to approve it?
I'll move.
I'll second.
David, Pam, any further discussion?
The only other discussion is based off of our workshop discussion. Roger, if you could please provide some clarification around what the actual expenses were for, like we had discussed in the workshop. I just
Right.
wanted to get it on the record.
Fine.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Roll call, I'm sorry, Bill.
Oh, we need a roll call? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Trustee Sally,
Support, yes.
President Lamont,
Yes.
A long night.
Trustee Hansen,
Support.
Trustee Hanky,
Aye.
trustee Goldberg,
Aye.
trustee Ehrlich,
Aye.
Motion passed.
You good?
Yep.
Okay, next item is a Arbor Day proclamation for 2023, April 28th is Arbor Day. The proclamation is in your packet here, and we have a motion to approve the 2023 Arbor Day proclamation.
I move.
I'll second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the next one is West Nile virus. We need a resolution to get funding for West Nile virus prevention. So we have a motion to approve the West Nile virus fund resolution.
Motion to approve.
I second.
And any discussion?
Real quick one quick question is how we handle the funds for this, typically the DIS.
Typically what?
Are we using them to, the mosquito repellent that are thrown in the standing water?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they leave it with the council.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Last item, there's no handout here, but we had some discussion about the Gen Stand property and creating a pathway, and rather than hire a professional consultant, we thought it might be just as easy to have three of us go out there and walk in, David is well aware of the study that was done and marked all the significant trees. So David and I have volunteered to do that, and we're looking for a third member if somebody else from council is
I can't
interested.
support this, honestly.
I'm sorry?
I can't support this at all, honestly.
Okay, then you won't be one of the
I don't know why we were talking about this, to even start down this process. We are $345,000 over budget for the year. Last thing we needed to do is another long-term liability financially for the village. Of all the things we do in this village, this is so far down the list. I don't even know why we started entertaining this, frankly.
The planning commission was tasked with reviewing it and looking, and they spent quite a long time looking at it.
And we've said it every single time, this is not a priority.
I'd be happy to say a few words. David, you remember well, this came to us, I don't know, a year and a half ago. We all looked at it, everyone felt, what a wonderful thing to do.
No, everybody did not think that. They did not think that.
Well, I'm speaking for the planning commission. They all felt it's a wonderful thing to do. I've heard a lot of people feel it's a wonderful thing to do. We've put a fair amount of work into it. I think it can be done for free. Willing to, also the planning commission can help spearhead all of this. And, I think we can do something really nice.
We know there's something from the village, from the state or the city where they can.
Right.
It's something
Possibility.
we can borrow from the Oakland County, I think,
No.
that breaks up the stuff and does the work for us.
They're
This is
all
something-
Long-term liability for the village, creating a path there. This is so far down the list of things we want to accomplish.
It's kind of high up on our list, though. We put it
It's
high
not
up
high
on
on
our
the
list.
All we're talking about is
pathways.
another person on the subcommittee. If there's nobody else, that's fine. David and I will just move forward doing our thing. So does anybody else want to participate?
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is clearly a hot button item. So I always want to take a step back. Your request is for a volunteer from the council
Right.
to do what?
To try and determine what the path is. Take some stakes and here's what the path
A
should be.
path on this property.
Right, on the village-owned property.
Which could ultimately connect with South Greenbrier, which is one of the goals. I think
Right.
to me, that's the greatest benefit of this property, more than any little pathway to walk. If it can be a connector, they can connect South Greenbrier so they can come straight down that Kirk and be able to connect to the village. To me, that's where the benefit lies, more than anything else.
But the request today is for a volunteer.
Right.
To go and mark a potential path.
Exactly.
You're not asking for money.
Nope.
You're not asking for a blessing.
Nope.
Officially.
Nope.
And I wonder if you could explain how the first step, which is kind of what I think this is, to a bigger project of actually building a path, right? How does that fit into our long-term view of connecting neighborhoods to the village center?
That's what I just said.
Well, you talked about Greenbrier.
South Greenbrier, North Greenbrier, that entire neighborhood over there.
Those are
it's a
two
very-
separate requests though, right? Like
Well,
one
I was
is,
making the comment that
sure,
that was-
one is connecting, the other one's creating a nature trail, right?
And the
Because
whole
that's the
goal is
intent
that
of the motion.
But the goal of creating that nature trail, to me, is what I was trying to say, is why it's not so far down. It is high, if it's considered a pathway connector, then it's actually high up on the priority list.
So I'm all about context here. This is about, that is my only concern here. You and I have talked, you and council have talked many times about pathways to connect the neighborhoods to the village center. We've started on one over by Garden Way, right? We are in the middle of I don't have any problems with I don't have a problem with the request as it is. What I have a concern about is the implication. Because when you first started took over as president, you wanted us to give the Historical Society $15,000 to build pathways, and people didn't support the idea. So in my mind, I'm wondering, is this another door to get that? I don't think it is. I think you're asking for a volunteer. That doesn't require an agenda item, number one. But secondly, I need an answer, given the nature of the request, how do you see this fitting into the list of pathway-related projects that are yet unfunded how does that fit from a timing and priority perspective?
I mean, I think Kathy's brought up the one connection that would be potentially really beneficial. All the folks on Greenbrier, the Greenbrier Horseshoe, could use a connector there to avoid the major intersection in 13 Mile.
Is there a public, is there some easement,
It would-
private property?
Pardon me?
No.
No.
So there's no
I mean,
easement right now?
I think, the discussions we've had about the easements, it's something that, I've talked about before about, like when I was 18 years old, I cut a lawn up on Rosamond. If you wanted to get down that hill, you opened the gate up and you drove, I could drive down that. And if you were a young kid going to the school, you knew how to get where you needed to go.
But let's stick with what we're talking about here. There are no easements on Greenbrier. There are none.
No, you're correct.
Okay.
So it
So
does
there's no way
involve
to
getting
make a
any
connection
easements,
to that.
and we've thought about this a lot. I've thought about it a lot. I think look what Jenny Deerwich did for our village. She donated 5 acres to the village. I think there are people who could see this vision and say, wouldn't it be wonderful to connect our neighborhoods? Other places have them. Developers put in connectors in their, the one they're doing at Booth School right now. They've got a sidewalk going through. They did it ahead of time, right? We do have easements that we could take advantage of in other places that would open up places people want to go.
So then, do that. Open the easements that we have where people want to go.
So that's-
Spend our time
yeah,
energy on
to-
that.
to
I
Mark's
think one
point,
place
though-
they want to go is this beautiful 5-acre parcel, just right across my driveway. It'd be a wonderful thing for the people of Franklin to feel invited and welcome to walk there.
We're mixing too many issues, right? If we want to check it out for an easement or the potential use of an easement, then make it part of a bigger project to actually explore
So
and go through
perhaps
connectivity.
you-
Hang on, if we want it to be a nature trail, then
But we've
let's
already rejected
say
that.
it's a nature trail.
We've already rejected
That's
that.
primarily what it is. And if you read our memo that we worked hard on, developed it, worked on it for years, it's been developed. We spent a significant amount of money marking trees on all of our public properties so that we can understand how would we prioritize this. We looked at dog parks. you know?
Peter.
And we felt, after a lot of hard work, that this is really a great thing that could be done at very little or no cost.
Peter,
the we
council
is,
already voted against that nature path idea.
True.
So you'll have to enlighten me on that. When did that occur?
Came up in the last 2 years, allocating funds for it, and we turned it down.
Would you agree with that?
No.
Is that the case?
we turned down a $15,000 request.
And you referred
for-
it to the
You
planning
referred it to
commission?
planning commission.
No, we
Well, no, what we referred to the planning commission wasn't the expenditure. We referred to
Right.
the planning commission to develop a bigger picture.
Right.
Talk to us land use experts.
Okay.
About
Yep.
the options and the opportunities we have to connect neighborhoods and safely move people on foot or on bicycle to
Well,
the downtown.
but it
That's what
did-
I remember
it did-
referring to the planning commission.
And boy, and there was a question about, David, maybe you could help us here, but there was a question about, you know, what are they asking us to do?
Yeah, okay.
And we tried to put it in a big context. You know, say, all right, well, someone wants a path there. Well, just because someone wants a path there, there may be other things we want to look at too. So I think we did that, and we said, you know what, this is a good thing. It'd be a good thing for Franklin to do something like this. It's easy to do. We have this wonderful natural land that we were given. So that's our recommendation to you. You know, I'm not, obviously, you know, I'm not the decider.
But when this came up for a vote before, we said, no, we're not interested in doing that.
That wasn't what the vote was, we're not interested in spending $15,000, let's refer it to the planning commission, to let the planning commission to look at all the properties that we have and see which ones are the best ones to use and how we could best use them. And I think what ended up happening, and David, I think you can tell us, you can also, because you were the head of the planning commission at the time, was that we decided that the Jenstown building was probably the best property to develop.
The proposal was always for that property. Always.
So we have supported the connecting pathways, the pathway up there by the northwest corner. That makes sense. That connects a isolated subdivision to the rest of the village. That's supportive. This Jensen path was never.
So that's what I
doesn't
need
connect
to
it.
hear from you as a body, that you don't support it, but it sounds like we're really close to getting a commitment to actually getting some progress moving forward. It's a no-cost item.
It is a high-cost item.
We reviewed liability. We've talked about handicap accessibility. We've done a lot of groundwork on it, and especially if you do it with no money.
But here's the problem, Peter. When that path originally happened decades ago, it fell apart because of misuse, because no.
Yeah. And
So
when you
there
do it
was
for-
a path there originally. No one took care of it. It takes time and money
Right.
and hours to do it. And we're not gonna allocate.
And if
money to
if
it.
that's how you feel, that we don't want to do this kind of thing for the people of Franklin, that's okay.
No, that's
But, you know,
not what
and I
he's
agree.
saying. He's not-
Well, that's what I'm hearing. I don't know. That's what I'm hearing from one trustee. You know, the cost issue, obviously is, you know, I think it can become a non-issue. And it was done voluntarily. Boy Scouts were in there. I went back, helped them a little bit, but it really wasn't, it didn't get publicized. No one knew about it. They were not really clear where the paths were. And you know what? If you do it for free and we find that it's not something the village appreciates, then you don't fund it.
Well,
You don't
just-
say, let's put in cost to maintain it.
Just to be
and stuff
clear,
like that.
even if we do, to Mark's concern, even if we got it built for free, the liability of maintenance and the responsibility of maintaining falls on the village, regardless of any prior obligations, right? If the Boy Scouts want to volunteer their time every single year for it, okay. But to the extent that they eventually don't, it falls to the village, and then we're forced into the
It'd be
conversation
nice.
of when
It'd be
we close
nice.
it.
It'd be nice if we had a Parks and Rec division that could do some more things like this, but, you know, you're right, there's some element of that. But also paths, you know, I've done a fair amount of research on paths the last couple years.
But
Do
we
lot
have
of-
a path on the FCA property.
Right.
And it also goes into a community planning mentality of centralizing your sense of community in the downtown, right?
Yeah,
And so,
sure.
so I fully understand, you know, where the passion is coming from all angles. But my point is let's not try and shoehorn the potential possibilities of an easement, because if we're gonna put our efforts towards that, let's do that. And if it's for the exploration of creating a nature trail, let's just keep it clear that that's what our intent of this is, and what are the specific items for, okay, we get 3 volunteers. It's still time of 3 volunteers that are sitting on the council. That's still their time taken away from other priorities that we're trying to push through. So really defining what the scope and goal is. The work's already been done to the extent of marking trees. So what is the intent of this committee? And what are the objective goals coming out of it? And that's still, from this conversation, it's unclear to me.
Fair.
Okay. Very good.
I guess, Bill, I would love to see you persist with your, you need one more person that would allow something to move forward. I think all of this can
You don't
still
need
take
one
place.
more.
You don't
You don't need one more.
You don't need one more.
Because I'm
person. You
happy
can
to be that
continue to
person
do the
if you
work.
needed a person, but I don't think you need a person.
I
Okay,
agree with
okay,
that.
so yeah, I
don't
mean,
need
what
it.
they do on their time, you know,
Totally.
yeah.
Okay. In the discussion, meeting's adjourned.
All right, thank you.